Hey everyone, Matt Landfair here with Primary and Secondary. Welcome to ModCast. Today's episode number is 401. It's a Gun Nerds episode. We're going to be talking about the Revolver. Now, we've had Revolver episodes in the past. This one, we're going to go a little bit more in the weeds with some specific directions. We're going to cover some information that I think we can all agree that if someone's interested in a revolver or they're going to be carrying a revolver, some of these aspects are probably a little important to be aware of. And that includes upkeep. That includes the basic function to understand what you're carrying. So I thought it would be nice to get some people that actually work on these guns and carry them regularly and have this discussion. Today's date, we are looking at September 7th already, 2024. The year's almost up. Still have a bunch of episodes to do. Let's see here. We'll be doing intros here. My background is in law enforcement. Been doing the cop thing since last century. The only time I ever carry a revolver on duty is as a backup. I started with semi-autos. There were a few people that were carrying revolvers when I began, but yeah, they don't work in law enforcement anymore. Unfortunately, I didn't get an opportunity and I didn't think to talk to them about what they were carrying enough. And so now episodes like this it's almost like makeup time. I get to find out what I missed out on. And that kind of goes for my early interest in Model 10s, where they were so cheap. And I wish I would have bought more because they're just such a cool gun. Speaking of Model 10s, I have a Model 10 Snubby that Dave worked on. That's kind of cool. But when we get in these backgrounds, I'm going to say my absolute favorite thing, and that is make sure you're supporting those sources that you have found to be beneficial. These guys are going to say who they are, what they represent, who they represent. If there's a company involved, maybe a brand, pay attention to that. If you like what they're saying, you're probably going to want to follow them on social media. You're probably going to want to give them a like. You're going to give them a follow. If they share stuff that really helps you out, that maybe shed some light on something that you didn't understand before, you probably need to share that bit of information. That goes with everything primary and secondary. We have a lot of stuff that we publish on a regular basis, and those algorithms don't work in our favor because there's gun content being discussed here, and typically there are guns being shown. Those algorithms work against us. And you as the listener, if you appreciate what you're doing, please share, because you're gonna make up for those algorithms that work against us. So let's get into some backgrounds. Bryan with a Y.
Hey man, Bryan with a Y, back for my 350th episode of Primary and Secondary.
Yes.
No, I'm a retired copper out of Oklahoma. And grew up shooting PPC, which makes you have to be a de facto on the spot, like revolver, plumber, gunsmith. Shot a lot of, spent the bulk of my career shooting revolvers off and on, and doing a lot of work on them. Did some custom 1911 work, custom revolver work. Not really for the public. Darryl is about the only guy that gets any revolver work out of me anymore. Yeah. And then I'm one half of AmericanFightingRevolver.com, which is also up there with Darryl. It's the other half. And that's about it.
Cool. Nate?
I'm probably too young to be on here even, but I love revolvers. I love shooting them. Try to get better, try to learn as much as I can. Don't have anything to plug, so.
I'm trying to think of a smart ass thing to say about Nate, but
Nate's like you know what? Nate's like our favorite student, though. Nate's like why we do this.
hey, Nate, what did Bryan call you? He had a good nickname for you that you kept.
Well, it's my name on the
Discord.
primary and secondary Discord is Elder Millennial.
Yep.
which I will take. I'll take that. So.
Ed Darryl?
Darryl Bolke, retired Southern California lawman. I actually did start with a revolver. My first duty gun was the Hebrew Hammer, 4-inch 45 Colt. Carried that for about my first 5 years on the job, and have pretty much carried revolvers since minute one all the way through. through retirement. I carry one daily to this day. Usually they're in a snub or a backup roll, but or two. And other half of AmericanFightingRevolver.com with Bryan. I think we put out the best $5 revolver a month revolver content on the planet. And yep, that's what I do. We collect this stuff, have become historians of it, used them. We run some of the biggest revolver training events in the country. Some of this that we're going to talk about tonight with maintenance and upkeep, every month we're qualifying 250 officers on revolvers every single month. We run training events with, gun sites going to be over 100 this year. We just finished South Carolina with over 60 students. We run these large events and have been doing them for a while. So we see a lot of this stuff, and we see them in numbers. They're not the typical, well, my neighbor had this revolver once and here's what it did. We really get in the weeds and see what's going on with these guns and the problems and positives and negatives. So, that's our take on it.
Cool. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, you discussed you were putting together an article that sounded incredibly interesting, and due to Gen Pop Internet, you opted to keep it behind a paywall for good reason. But it's unfortunate.
If you read the article, you probably understand why I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate because good information, because it was pertinent and it was stuff that we recently were discussing. And hey, what do you know? Here's some really good info on it. But if we share it with Gen Pop, it's kind of like the episode I just did with Gary Roberts. The people that know better are loving it. People that have some emotional attachments to some beliefs are very upset with some of the things he said, along with his presentation. Oh, well.
And it's sad you kind of got to do that. But, again, all that stuff that I talked about in the article, that was actually very much deep internal, close hold, restricted LE stuff for a lot of years. So,
yeah.
You didn't talk about it outside of school.
Yeah.
So you can try to share it with them, but
yeah,
okay,
it's a waste. Yeah. Well, and that goes along with a lot of stuff we do here at primary and secondary. It's not necessarily, it's available to everyone, but it's not for everyone, and we recognize that. Oh well, it's nice to provide info.
Yeah.
Dave.
Dave Laubert, owner operator, Defensive Creations LLC. This is, believe it or not, this is my 26th year of business. I can't believe it. Specializing now solely in 1911s, high powers, and revolvers. I used to do a lot of just general gunsmithing. I've kind of gotten away from that because my backlog has been so overwhelming, and I just had to start making a decision. I had to focus on the revolver stuff. I actually fell into the revolver stuff kind of by accident. Every winter I would give myself a project that was not 1911 related, and I did a couple of K-frames one year, and a mutual friend of mine, Pat Rogers, put me in contact with this guy who wrote for magazines, and he wrote an article about the two K-frames that I had redone, and it took off from there. It just absolutely went crazy. So I've spent a lot of time in the last probably 10 years just focusing on the revolver stuff and digging deep into it, and a lot of custom work. I get a lot of custom requests, and yeah, it's good. I mean, business is good. I'm swamped as always. So
yeah. And you were a shop teacher prior?
I'm a machinist, tool and die maker by trade, and then I spent 13 years as a vocational high school machine trades teacher. Yeah, I taught from 99 till 13. And then I went full time with the business in 13. I got out of education because I couldn't stand the politics anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was always in trouble.
Yeah.
I was on a first name basis with all the administrators.
Yeah. Huh. Why does that kind of remind me of a lot of my law enforcement friends that might be on this panel? And then we have Scott.
Yeah, my name is Scott Van Dorsten, owner, gunsmith of Van Dorsten Custom Firearms up here in Sheridan, Wyoming. I've been a gunsmith for 17 years. Revolvers, Smith & Wesson revolvers is pretty much what got me interested in gunsmith. My first gun was a Smith & Wesson 629. I was looking for a 357 and found a really good price on a 44. So kind of went into the deep end on revolvers for my very first gun. And that gun had some issues and I fixed them, and that's what got me interested in gunsmithing. I specialize in Smith & Wesson revolvers in particular. I do custom revolver stuff in general. I also do scout rifles and am pretty deep into that world as well.
Very cool. Well, it probably makes sense that we just start with the overall basic function of a revolver.
Poke holes in people.
Hey, I've heard that somewhere. And that is not a popular thing to say. It's unfortunate. Yeah. But yeah, we could go over single action only or DA double actions. I guess it's not DASA.
They could be. They sort of are. I'd stick to the modern DA guns. The single action world is its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing, but it's its own thing.
Yeah, those are that's definitely a different sort.
And it definitely looks like Bryan has something very urgent to say.
Now you were saying or DASA, and I said, well, they can be SA.
Yeah, that's right, SA.
SA, homie.
Exactly. SA. Now, Colt just sent Darryl and I the new newish 4.25.
We're both sitting here breaking guns in.
Yeah.
So Colt was kind enough. We're teaching it at an event for them in outside of Baton Rouge at Ryan Gresham's facility. So we asked them real nicely, and they sent us a good brace of the 4.25 matte stainless pythons, and I couldn't help myself, so I started digging into them pretty quick, and it actually accompanied me to Dallas. So I'm down here for today and coming back tomorrow, but and all I'm traveling with is revolvers. It's really weird. So
most people are familiar with semi-autos. Gun goes off, slide reciprocates, ejects a round, feeds a new round. Then we have those revolvers, which I'll just leave it to you guys to explain.
Every time you pull the trigger, the cylinder turns and the gun goes bang. It's a little
Hopefully.
different. Hopefully. It's according to the design plan. So it's, versus a revolver versus a semi-auto where it's, basically loading a round after firing. The revolver loads the round before firing. Kind of a simple way to put that.
Can I take the non-gunsmith guy's stab at this?
Absolutely.
Sure. Semi-auto, the ammo drives the gun. With a revolver, your finger drives the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, to me, the biggest difference between them.
Yeah, shooter-induced malfunctions. Definitely see them on the range with newer shooters shooting Glocks. Not so much when we say, okay, now try this revolver, unless they're short-stroking or something like that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I've seen, where people don't let the trigger reset completely. And it's like, it's just turning, it's not firing. It's like, well, yeah.
Let it out.
And if I can point out something sort of interesting with that, because, you brought it up, from a training aspect, you know what we never used to see in the revolver days?
Hitting the trigger.
Revolvers.
Oh, yeah.
No, we never saw short stroking revolvers. That was like in the academy and training and qualifications and doing all that stuff. The one thing you just never saw was anybody short stroking a revolver, because we never knew how to do before that. Nobody knew how to pin a trigger.
Yeah.
And the first time we saw it rear its ugly head. I was actually calling an officer-involved shooting with one of my SWAT guys from the helicopter who was running a revolver, but he carried a SIG on SWAT. And it was weird. I'm watching this thing, and you can see the gun go bang, and it looks like he's doing something, and nothing happened, and bang, and nothing, and then bang. And what he was doing was he was, pinning that trigger or trying to go to reset on that revolver trigger. And after that, he went to a SIG across the board. But it was the first time we had seen it ever rear its ugly head. And then now when we do classes, we see it a lot because most people are kind of coming off of semi-autos or they run both or whatever. So revolvers are real good for fixing that. But it was something historically we did not kind of ever see. We had planned for if you press the trigger and nothing happened, that's because you had a bad primer.
Yeah.
From lubing your gun with WD-40 or something. But you did not. We saw that. We saw WD-40 primered, but you never really saw people short soaking triggers under stress or any of that because everybody learned to run the guns front to back. That did not rear its ugly head till the kind of post semi-auto world. Didn't even start seeing that until the 90s.
Would you say that's more prevalent with striker fire guys versus like somebody who's running a 1911?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
That was kind of my feeling. I've seen a lot more with striker fire guys.
I know John the Fish Cop and I have been really successful in implementing revolvers in training programs where if we have people that are running into some issues, whether it be pinning the trigger or a host of issues, here's a 38 Model 10 or one of the 856s or something, depending on the size of the officer. It's just been such a great tool, not only for at the range, but then also dry fire with that a little heavier trigger press. And that's a great workout for those newer officers that aren't used to shooting. Dave, you're about to say something, I can tell.
No, you just said Model 10, so I figured I'd.
Oh, heck
Model
yeah.
10. This was one of the ones that I bought years ago. They were police turn-in guns, and they were very affordable when I was buying them. And then I was doing my 3-inch conversion on them and reselling them. And this is the last one that I have. I just haven't been able to get rid of it because I like it. It's just a plain square butt 4-inch, and what a great gun.
There's really a lot to like. Yeah, there is a lot to like.
Do you guys, the guys that do the training, do you guys see the manurins ever show up in classes?
I've seen one.
Seen one.
Did it?
I would have ran mine, but mine didn't make it.
Okay.
We had one guy running one at Revolver Roundup last year briefly, and then it kind of started getting wonky. It didn't break, but it started really getting temperamental, and he retired it for a Korth.
It's that guy. Yeah,
that guy. Yeah. And I got to say, I was impressed with the Korth. I've been meaning to pester them for a while, but yeah, the Mandarin, it just like the trigger was sticking. There was just some things about it that were, and it could have been ammo. It could have been the ammo was gumming the gun up, but it sure did it in short order. And then he ran the Korth the rest of the time. There were actually a couple of guys running Korth revolvers, and they seemed to kind of be the Korth seemed to have the reputation that the Manhurans supposedly had. And I think the modern Manhurans, I don't think they're built as well as the older ones. And especially they had, what was it, the MR88 that was built like a Ruger. Yeah, and those guns were tanks, way overbuilt. This new stuff just, to me, it didn't do much for me. But
that's interesting because I'm working on a experiment. Because I keep getting asked the question of, well, the Manurin has, the round count at training, and their big claim to fame, 150 rounds a day. They don't tell you for how many rounds, but supposedly a lot. And I keep getting asked questions like, well, will the Smith and Wesson do that? It's like, I don't know. I've never tried it. So I'm putting together two test guns. I've got two identical 686s. One of them I'm leaving factory stock. Second one I'm doing a full custom rebuild on it. I mean, all the internals are getting replaced with the exception of the rebound, which doesn't need to be replaced. The gun's getting coated, the diamond light carbon coating and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm just going completely over the top with customization on it. And then we're going to put 3,000 rounds through each gun to see what they do.
So if you guys want, I can kind of address that Manurin thing with the whole. My best friend, who I got mentored under coming into this world, was one of those guys who spent a bunch of time overseas with all those European counterterror teams back in the late 70s and 80s, and spent quite a bit of time with GIGN, and would flat tell you that those guys could shoot those Manurins like nobody's business. He goes, yep, every bit of. Shot them every day. They were very proud of their shooting. They, all that. But you got to kind of take that into context. That's the Delta Force of France. In the revolver era, every major police department that ran revolvers had full-time armorers that were, the armorers were at the levels of what Scott and Dave do. What we consider a master gunsmith today was a police armorer in a lot of those years. Those guys back in those eras could change out barrels, they could flat rebuild a revolver from nothing. Even my department, there was only one guy of our guys I'd let work on a gun, but they went to a somewhat serious gunsmithing school as well as the factory school. So you can imagine what GIGN had attached to them to maintain those guns, plus the reputation of them using those Manurins. So what kind of factory support did they have from Manurin to keep the guns running? And what kind of support did they have of literally military level armor depot to keep the guns maintained? You can maintain anything. I can shoot a gun 150 rounds a day, every day, if somebody will provide to keep putting parts back in that gun, and that's just the way it is. I got to know John Ray at LAPD before he was on SWAT. He was the Metro Armorer. Like, they had their own armors assigned to their special operations division, so a lot of that stuff needs to get taken into the context of what level of support did the gun have to go with it. It's your premier French national counterterror asset that does have this paramilitary sort of thing. They're like kind of almost half cop, half mill. And they had full factory support, full armor support, full, resources to do that. And you can get that gun to probably run, they could have handed them Smith & Wesson Model 10s, and the gun would have run. So, some of this builds reputation off minus the whole story. So that's, a lot of guys do it. I'm hard pressed to see somebody to get those kind of round counts here of, go buy 12 cases, 1,000 round cases of ammo and go to work with your Manurin and let me know how it goes. I can pretty much tell you, go grab anything, let me know how it goes.
Yeah. Supporting
it yourself ain't going to happen.
Yeah, luckily I got the support of a local ammo company that's supplying the ammo for this.
I can't remember. I totaled it up one time across K's and L's. One season of practice and competition, I had about 42,000 rounds, and better than 18,000 of them were through a K-frame, with a Douglas bull barrel. And I mean, it was a top fuel dragster. It wasn't a run of the mill gun. And I had parts breakage every 6,000 rounds, hammer noses, you get in shake out of them. I mean, even shooting 148 wad cutters. The L frames did a little better. We had to shoot 158 grain standard pressure service load for distinguished and service match. And my distinguished gun one season got about 12,000 rounds through it. And I had no parts breakage, but it required a lot of detail cleaning maintenance to keep it up and running. But not shooting Magnum ammo. I've seen K-frames go down in less than 100 rounds with Magnum ammo. And, right off and I'm not talking the new model 66 or whatever is not what the old ones were. They're built completely different. But those vintage guns, I've watched them take a massive dump within 100 rounds that required either a new barrel, you have to hacksaw the forcing cone off and put a new barrel in. I've seen them get in shake so bad that you couldn't pull the trigger, where it bind against the forcing cone and things like that. So, which I think the L frame was really made to address a lot of those K-frame nuances when they went to everybody shooting Magnum ammo.
Yep.
And, which even I get a 65 setting, a 3-inch 65 setting over here. It's never had a Magnum ammo through it, but yeah, with the high volume, any revolver is going to have a host of nuances that go on, or a host of maintenance nuances that go on when you get, especially, it seems like to me over 500 rounds is where stuff starts to get weird. And with the vintage guns, the newer stuff seems to, I think with the metallurgy and everything, it seems to, you can run them a little harder, a little longer, but I don't see a whole lot of point in running 357 Magnum in anything but like a GP 100 or an N frame. So,
well, that's going to be the fun part of this project. I mean, it's, I'm going to get to document every failure, any issue that comes up, everything's going to be videoed for YouTube and all that stuff. So, everybody's going to really get to see, it's like, okay, this is what you can expect when you do run them hard, because we're going to be using 158 grain, requested it at 1250 feet per second. So, I mean, we're not babying these guns. We're hammering them.
Well, the other thing
glad
is
somebody else is shooting those and not me.
That's right.
I'm not going to be the only one shooting them. I'm pulling in volunteers.
and the other thing is on timing on those guns. I've seen guns that were fired right-handed that would time up when you fired them left-handed. Like, so, that might be something you might explore as.
And that's one of the guys shooting it is a left-handed, so we'll get to see if something like that happens. So that's really good info. These are both brand new 686s. They're both 7 shots. So they're both out of the same batch, and I already had to get a replacement cylinder from Smith & Wesson for one of them.
The other one is how they
fired it yet.
How they run the trigger can really, with the cylinder stop on Smith and Gage is it's pretty abrupt. The Colts, they kind of ease in right at the last second. I mean, if you run that gun and stage it, and I've seen people keen trigger stops or cylinder stops over to the point that they'll free spin after, just a couple of dozen rounds. So,
well, Colts don't lock up until the final pull of the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
You see it most prevalently when you single action shoot them. They won't be locked up until you actually pull the trigger, even though the hammer's cocked.
Yeah. And that mechanism is unique, how it's spring loaded, but just the way the hand engages and it doesn't have a hand spring. It's got a hand lever.
Yeah.
And right there at the back second or 16th of an inch is when everything goes into battery.
Yep.
And these new ones lock up like a freaking vault.
Yeah, I was really surprised that they kept that aspect on the new ones. I've only had my hands on one, but that was one of the surprising things that I saw, that they did keep that aspect of the design.
Well, and they fully squared the notches in the cylinder. The old ones kind of had a ramp that went in, and it was only squared on one side, and these are squared in like a Smith & Wesson. So when I looked at it, it was like, oh, they took the old design and really just ruggedized the crap out of it, you know? So, but yeah, I'm interested to see the results on your, because I didn't do much work with the 7-shot Smiths. I always like the trigger because they have K-frame ratchet spacing. So you get a nice K-frame roll to them.
Yeah.
Which I never liked that on the 6-shot L's, but shot them okay.
We figured that, the 7-shots are the most popular. I mean, the 686 7-shot is probably the most popular of the full-size Smith & Wessons is going right now. So we figured that would be the one to use because that's the one everybody wants.
Is it a single barrel or a single piece barrel? It's not the screwed in barrel.
Yeah, it's the single piece barrel. This is the one that's being left in the factory condition. And then this is the one that's getting all the custom work. You can see it's in pieces. And like I said, I had to get a new cylinder already for this because the fit of the ratchet was absolutely atrocious. And somebody had dropped it and there was a ding on the front and the back. And I'm like, nope, that's for a brand new gun. That's unacceptable. So I had to call my rep and say, hey, I need you to send me a new cylinder. So.
Matt, do you mind if I ask a question that's related to this? Just because okay, I'm going to use my one here because I think this is honestly the perfect panel to ask this question between gunsmiths and instructors.
If you were a Twinkie, what would they fill you with?
Well, I wanted to ask if I was a worm, if they would all still love me, but no,
that's right.
If the moon were made of cheese, would you eat it?
So my question is, you were talking about, durability, parts breakages, things like that. For somebody who is simply out shooting these guns, practicing with them, like I finally got my loading setup going again after a couple of years of not really being able to do a lot of that. So my volume of shooting is going to be going way up. What is somebody shooting and practicing with one gun, with maybe a couple guns? What do you need to be aware of as someone who's not a master gunsmith, but wants their gun to be in good order and not be doing things to it by neglect that is going to, increase parts breakages and things like that?
Okay.
And what issues do you start seeing? Because like I've seen things like, trigger hammer pin breaks on a Smith, that used to kind of be this death knell thing. Apparently you can fix them now, but what are kind of sort of the things to be aware of and look at? So
Nate, before they're able to answer, I just want to let you know your question is perfectly in line with your I'm just going to sit back and you can run this because that was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Because that's what I want to hear.
Can I do the first answer because it led into something I was going to bring up anyways?
He would still love you if you were a worm.
Yes, I would. But part of it is how we're training with these guns. What gets lost in the equation with this is, all the guys goes like, I've been a trainer since 2012. Okay, cool. And into revolvers for 2 years. Okay. You have, what we do today is not how we trained revolvers. It wasn't how we shot them. Wasn't how we trained with them. Wasn't how we went to training classes. I mean, ask any of your modern police firearms instructor who went to police firearms instructor school, like the 8-hour school with a revolver. There's not a lot of us left. We went with a revolver and they told us to bring an auto versus the other way around, So, for example, our qual course was 30 rounds. We qualled every month, but it was 30 rounds. Most guys would practice. You go out and you might shoot You're shooting 30 rounds at a time. We used to actually, the ammo, and it was the most atrocious crap in the world, would come bagged for us in 30-round bags is how we would practice. And we shot B8s. And we shot ammo that was the most atrocious stuff in the world that you would never put in a semi-auto. We sit here and gauge how reliable revolvers are. We put stuff in revolvers. We would, hey, who's shooting 115 grade lead reloads in their staccato? Nobody, So you have that. So if you think about training intervals, can you shoot 30 rounds every day at a somewhat decent pace? Your gun will be fine, especially if you clean it. If we would go to a training class and you might shoot 150 rounds, we didn't go to classes where you shot 1,000 rounds of ammo a day in revolvers. The training was just really different. If you think, what I tell guys with revolvers, if the gun is clean and your ammo is good, good high quality ammo, and the gun is clean and well maintained, you can pretty much be assured you are going to get through the first load on the gun and the first 2 loads you're carrying on your body. And the gun you're probably not going to have any problems whatsoever. If you want to take that gun to gun school and blow some ridiculous amount of rounds through it, you are going to have maintenance issues. You are going to break things. The guns are really not designed for that. We were talking about the manurins, and where a lot of guys are having problems with those because we're shooting them in a manner they weren't shot like before, which is fast. That's how Caleb Giddings breaks guns, because that cylinder is spinning. Something has to stop it when you're spinning all that mass at speed with your finger. That there's parts that got to get in there, and you guys all know the technical parts that do that, but you are putting really heavy advanced wear on that versus a nice, clean, smooth trigger press through puts far less wear on the gun. So some of it is how we're training, what we're training with, what ammo are you running? One of the reasons I've got an arrangement with High Desert Cartridge, why we did the load development we did, is so you can train with full jacketed ammunition, which keeps the guns clean, and in the appropriate caliber, so you keep the front of the cylinders clean and don't gum them. A lot of this we're trying to get into keeping the guns more maintenance free. It's why we run these massive revolver events, and we don't seem to have the problems everybody else does when they try to do a revolver class. All the guns broke. I don't know what you people are doing. Been running revolver roundup for years. And yeah, we'll get a gun or two go down or some little issue, but we don't see what everybody else does, where there's 6 people in class. So a lot of this is appropriate ammo, appropriate training, appropriate training pace, not heating the guns up. Again, revolver or autos do much better in a training environment, in a hard training environment. And I find the revolvers do much better in a field environment where they're getting shot in space. They're not in your perfect shooting stance. They're not in your perfect grip. They're not all these perfect things. Just go watch body cam video. We never saw malfunctions in the revolver days that we see today with semi-autos, because you could shoot the gun in space because your fingers driving the gun, not the ammo and not how that gun's locked in a grip. But you go to a shooting class and that auto is going to outdo that revolver every day if you try to put them under the same type of training atmosphere. And because most trainers today are auto-based trainers, they do the classes like it's an auto class, where when we do them, we set these classes up to be set up like we do a revolver class. So that tends to be, I find, a lot of where these maintenance issues come. The other thing is, like when I went to firearms instructor school with a revolver, you know what you did before lunch? Cleaned your gun. You know what you did before you went home for the day? You cleaned your gun. What we had on the range, we had a ultrasonic cleaner. We had appropriate brushes. We had a Lewis lead remover on the range. I always tell people the one thing that never got stolen off the range with our cleaning equipment was the Smith & Wesson screwdriver, which are worth a fortune these days. But they just sat in a bin with everything else because everybody needed them, because you had to make sure your screws were tight, and we needed them to adjust our sights. So a lot of this was a maintenance thing. When I was in patrol, before the range was next to the locker room, if it rained out, you came in, you lubed and maintained and wiped your gun down before you went in the locker room. Nobody does that with a Glock anymore. It's a different world. It's kind of like Dave's Pontiac. Man, if you can't set points in a, if you can't adjust your carburetor, you're kind of screwed.
Right.
These things need a screwdriver. They just kind of need a different level of maintenance. So that's a lot of it, Nate, in that you have to kind of set the training to match the equipment, if that makes sense.
Well, I think I can maybe add a little bit to that too. Darryl, do you think that part of that problem exists because people's expectations today have become so much greater? What am I trying to say? To we see it all the time. We see torture testing this, torture testing that. How many rounds can my AR go before it breaks something? How many rounds can my staccato go before it breaks something? And guys are deliberately shooting them and not maintaining them. And they're shooting them to failure. That way they can jump on the internet and say, oh, well, my, fill in the blank Wonder Blaster 5000 broke at 200 rounds and it's a piece of shit. Well, is it because it's a piece of shit, or is it because you didn't take care of it? I see that a lot. Guys will deliberately not take care of their equipment. They'll deliberately not maintain it because somehow they feel that there's this badge of honor that if it goes 5,000 rounds without a malfunction, that somehow it's better than everything else. And I can't understand that.
No, to me, it's a bit of a different mentality because of age and how we train and some other stuff. That is part of it on the internet, but on a professional level, say at an agency training level or inside of an organization, or people who are actually serious and not trying to be a YouTube celebrity. So I'll use the car analogy again. I have a high performance truck. I drive a Raptor with a Boss 6.2. I'm at 230,000 miles on that thing. So every 100,000 miles, I have to put plugs in it. Okay. Dave, do your Pontiac go 100K on plugs? No.
No.
The other, okay, so I could say, well, mine's much more reliable because I can do all this stuff, and I pull it into Jiffy Lube or whatever to change the synthetic oil in it, and I wouldn't know how to work on a thing in there. However, what your Pontiac will never do is have the computer brain fry itself and your car no working no more, and there's nothing you can do to fix it.
Right.
They're just different animals, and they have strong and weak points to both. And the maintenance is different. There's nothing like driving. I know people out there truly preparing for Armageddon, and they don't have modern cars. They're seeking out pre-computer chip diesels for a reason. There's something behind that. My vehicle doesn't have a computer in it, and it has a diesel engine that I can run on vegetable oil. Right. And, so these things now, so which one's more reliable? Your modern day, Toyota, whatever, that's fuel injected everything with a brain, or that old truck with a diesel? I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, we're sitting there going, yeah, my Raptor will go 100,000 miles without, 16 spark plugs. Does it make it better or worse? Not really, because one little huge glitch in the computer, in the CPU brain, and the whole thing dies. Right. So, who knows? It's managing expectations. And to me, the worst problem is trying to apply auto stuff to revolvers and revolver stuff to autos, it goes along like with grip or how we hold the guns. The worst problem we had when we transitioned from revolvers to autos is we were holding the autos like revolvers, and now everybody wants to hold a auto like a revolver like an auto. I'm like, you do know one thing's got a thing that goes like this, and the other has a spinny that does this, and one the recoil drives this, and the other one your finger drives this, and you kind of hold them different to make all those things work. Now, did we have a lot of problems driving the autos with a revolver grip? Nope. And that grip was very good to have them not taking out of our hands, because sometimes you had to fight for them. So it wasn't a huge detrimental thing, but we learned a lot by developing a grip more that's better adapted for the functioning of a semi-auto. And again, is it a horrible thing to shoot a revolver like an auto? Well, if you got, childlike thumbs and shoot mouse part loads like Caleb, you can get away with that, But for me, I hold a revolver like a revolver that's set up for the grip on that gun, and I hold an auto like an auto that's set up for the recoil characteristics of that gun, and adapt to both of them. And these things are just different. It's like, Mac and Windows, they're just different. It's like running a Steyr AUG or an AK versus running an AR. They're different animals, and you got to kind of run the guns different, maintain them different, train them a little different, and they all have their pluses and minuses and work within that.
So I'd like to address Nate's question with some gunsmithing points. So like you were asking things to look for. So I would say one of the things to keep an eye on is your ejector rod. They can come loose, and when they start to back up, they start to lock up the gun. They are reverse threads, so watch out for that. These two screws, they can come loose and back out, and if this front one comes out, when you open your cylinder leaves the gun. And then the last one is your rear sight screw. That will come loose, and you'll start to see, this is like essentially a giant spring. So when it starts to come loose, you'll see the front of it start to nose up. Keep an eye on those before you go to the range, before you go shoot it each time. And that'll keep you out of a lot of trouble like that. And when you're getting a lot of round counts going down, just watch your timing. For some reason, I see it more with the 22 revolvers, but maybe it's just because people shoot them more, but they'll go out of timing pretty quickly, I would say.
Scott, I think it's because they're trying to get a gun designed for 5 to time to 8. Is what the problem on the 22s is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Nate and I have trained together a bunch, but the two that I always look at, aside from, your yoke screw or crane screw, whatever you want to call it, is the forcing cone. Forcing cone right there. You can tell if the gun's out of time when you start getting lead buildup. On the Smith & Wessons, it's on the right side. On the Colts, it'll be on the left side, where it'll start shaving lead. But you can have a gun that's in time start shaving lead and jackets if the forcing cone is like egregiously dirty. And if you don't have a Lewis lead remover tool, I make these custom tools. Darryl saw me make one yesterday, where you take a steel bore brush or a chamber brush, stick it in there, turn it 90 degrees, bend it 90 degrees, and that works pretty good in lieu of a Lewis tool. On the new Smiths, I don't see the crane in shake like they used to have because of that spring-loaded detent setup. They don't get crane in shake like they used to, but they will get yoke in shake, and that's kind of best left to the professionals, unless you got an ejector rod tool and you got some power custom shims or something like that. That's a pretty good, what do you call it? Band-aid for that situation. But you're holding up a yoke and crane there.
Yeah. So what he's talking about when he's saying yoke and shake versus crane and shake, down here, this is the part that goes inside the gun. In the old Smiths, I honestly think that issue was more of attributed to people putting the wrong screw back in the wrong spot. Because that in the old models, that front screw was fitted to that, so it didn't put excess pressure on it. But the next one behind that was not, and people would switch them. So I kind of think that issue was more attributed to that than anything else. That's just my experience. Opinions vary. Up here, this is the part that goes inside the cylinder itself, and what'll happen is under recoil, the cylinder will hit the back of this, and it'll basically start to peen it in. And it'll start to let the cylinder slide back and forth a lot more, and that's end shake. There's two ways to fix it. Shims is one way. It's a quick and easy down and dirty way to do it. There's a tool. I don't know that it's still offered from Brownells. It is essentially a pipe cutter with a dull blade where you can actually swage this back out. And I like to do it that way because I'll swage it out further and then cut it to fit. And it looks like Dave's going to go grab one off his shelf.
Or if you're brave, you can just do what I did and dull your own pipe cutter blade.
If I had to buy a new one, that's exactly what I would do. I would blade out and go run it against a grinder real quick and done.
So Scott, one of the old school deals with the screws is for the real serious dudes.
Yeah.
You'd have those fitted, that fitted screw in the front. You get a spare done and you put that in the back so that you can interchange them or replace them yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I did for years.
That was serious revolver dude stuff.
Haven't done it in a while, but I used to fit that center screw because you will, just from opening and closing the cylinder on those old ones, especially like shooting PPC, it's, 150 round match. So, or 5 matches that total 150 rounds. So you're cracking the cylinder every 6 rounds. And Smiths, they fitted them kind of funky where they would slow down before they would have a little engagement when they were new, and you would wear that surface down pretty quick, and then you'd start getting crane and shake. But I'm with you. I think a lot of that got perpetuated by, like, my dad went to the police academy. They taught him to completely tear their revolvers down, and the old indexing pinhole in a set of stocks, they would tell them to put their yoke screw in that because it's fitted. And of course, I'd go to the range sometimes and see a guy with a pile of revolver parts, and I'm going, which one's a yoke screw? Oh, I think it's this one. I'm like, well, look at the one with file marks on it. That's the easiest way to tell. But all the comp guns that I carried, I always had both screws fitted up. And the other thing is you could rotate them, and that would extend the life without having in shake issues. So usually I tear my gun down after the open match and team matches, which that'd be about 280 rounds a day. And I'd pull those screws and rotate them when I did a detailed cleaning. But
also generationally, they've had different cuts. Like even on this modern ones, it's not cut all the way around where they used to be. And then some of them at some point they just had a straight square cut around, and then they had a bevel cut that went all the way around. So generationally they've had different,
the square cut ones were the pre-spring loaded screw.
Yes. Yeah. Most of those were, which I kind of like the spring loaded one. I think the spring loaded solved a lot of problems, and I've only seen it create one.
That was one of those engineering upgrades that Smith came out with.
Yeah.
And when they did, I was like, I was already into shooting revolvers because I think that came out in 93, if I remember right. And but it wasn't real common on a lot of the police issued guns because they stopped issuing guns. Most agencies stopped revolver issuance in about 89 or 90. So that they really didn't get into that era. But I started seeing it on the J frames first. And I was like, crap, they ought to make them all like this. This is like eliminates so many headaches.
Yeah.
And I felt like for the modern era, that was probably one of the best engineering upgrades they ever did.
Yep. The only thing I'll say you got to watch out for is you need to be careful not over torquing that because you'll snap that screw right off.
Yeah, those thread walls are pretty thin.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Well, and going back, and that was the beauty of that Smith & Wesson factory screwdriver that came, is the guys couldn't get enough. And that's why we kept them on the range with that little smaller screwdriver, is because they couldn't over torque those screws. It kind of was like a torque limiter in its size that, they're not throwing some gigantic, oh, look, I got my T-handle, fix it, and away you go, So.
And those blades on those aluminum handled Smith screwdrivers
were perfectly fitted.
They were perfectly fitted, but they were thin enough where when you hit a certain torque, they would bend. You'll see a lot of them with a wave in it. So you get some dude that's got like ham-handed pig knuckles, that can get some torque.
The Brownells ones are designed the same way, intentionally. And what Darryl was saying, it's like, so here's your full-size screwdriver handle. That's not what you use to torque down your side plate screws. Use the little guy.
Yeah.
Use this one. Not this one.
Yeah. Well, if some is good, then Magnum is better.
Yeah.
Saw that on the internet. It was a guy on YouTube doing it. He had a big screwdriver. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I take out flies with a cannon.
I know, but for Scott and Dave, that's job security. So it's all good.
And don't pry your damn side plate off.
Oh God, discuss this, Bryan, please.
Okay. Okay.
Here
we go. Here, I got this. All right. So here's a already disassembled. Your side plate goes in there. And I generally tell people, like, if you're watching YouTube videos about Smith & Wesson revolvers, and the first thing the guy does is stick a screwdriver under here to pry it up, stop that video.
Oh, stop. Don't say it.
Stop that video.
It hurts. It hurts.
So
what you should do is hold your gun flat like this with the screws out and take the wood handle of your hammer, okay, and just wrap the handle and it pops right up. That's all you got to do. And if you have any questions about that, consult. Where's my book? Man, I wanted to show it. I think I took it home in my bag. I've been reading it. Grab a different one.
Kuhnhausen,
yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is the 1911 one, but Kuhnhausen, they all look the same, just have different guns in them. Kuhnhausen Smith & Wesson
shop manual.
It's probably got one of the best instructions for disassembling Smith & Wesson revolvers that I've seen anywhere, and that includes the Smith & Wesson Armorer's Manual.
So 2 years ago, one of our AFR cadre, who's a very large 5th generation Texan, brought me 3 guns that the triggers wouldn't move on. And I got my straight edge out and put them against the side plate, and I went, oh dear God. And that thin area where it transitions down to the front 2 screws, people will put the yoke screw in and then torque the back screw down, and they're done. They're toast. And I was like, man, I don't want to fit a new side plate, because fitting a side plate on a blued gun, if you're not going to dunk it in a salt bath afterward, it's like, oh man. So I go back to the George Nanti book. George Nani's book on gunsmithing, which is like a general gunsmith book from, I think it was like the last edition was published in like 77. And he goes into great detail on how to re-straighten a side plate. And it is somewhere between witchcraft and blacksmithing.
Yeah.
And I sent Wayne a video of me with a 1/2-inch round brass punch and his side plate straddling my vice jaws. So I was smacking it back into alignment. And he's like, oh dear. And then I finished up in a Kurt machinist vice and just torqued it down. Yeah.
There's the Nani book.
Yeah.
The only reason I have this is because I got one of the guns that's in here. So
Yeah.
So usually when you're having trouble getting your side plate back on after reassembling everything, it's because the hammer block isn't quite lining up into its slots properly. And what I'll do is I'll thumb the hammer a little. Don't try to fully cock it, just thumb it a little, and you'll feel the side plate start to slide on back down. And that's everything's getting lined up in the grooves.
Yeah. I trap the top edge of it with the side plate when I go in. And then sometimes just taking your screwdriver handle and just giving it a little tap. I mean, like you're tapping a pin on a desk and they'll slide into place.
That's why I use the brass and plastic hammers. This one is one of the specialty Brownells ones because everything's special from Brownells.
So I got a question for Dave.
Yes.
Forcing cone angle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you cut them to? 11?
Usually.
I was going to say that seems to be kind of the thing.
Unless, I mean, I have had customers request oddball ones, special ones.
Yeah.
And, I'll generally cut them to whatever they want. But if the customer doesn't request something out of the ordinary, I cut them at 11 usually.
Yep. 99% of the time.
What would be the reasoning? Would they be cutting those differently for like lead only, wad cutter only, something like that?
People like to experiment a lot of times, especially competition guys, and they'll go, if I have a gun that comes in real tight as far as the timing goes, sometimes they'll reduce that forcing cone, the angle of it, so it's more of a straight. There's less of a funnel going into the rifling, and their theory is that I don't know. The one guy was trying to explain it to me. He was wanting something that there was going to be a more abrupt deformation of the bullet going into the rifling instead of that nice gradual taper of the 11 degrees. He wanted it to be like all at once. You know what I mean? And
so he
never came back. So I don't know if it worked or not. But yeah, you get some really weird requests sometimes.
So the whole theory behind the 11 degree is that with it being a more gradual funnel, it creates less stress on the frame, and it's a little bit less deformation on the bullet so quickly, but it's allegedly increased life for frame and barrel.
Well, the other thing too is, I've also had people request that I basically machine out the back of the barrel, make the forcing cone normal, and then machine out the back, almost like back boring a shotgun. So the rifling doesn't even really start to engage the bullet until the bullet's an inch into the barrel. I've had some really weird requests over the years, and it's just guys experimenting, trying to find something new to make the gun more accurate or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't get it a lot, but sometimes I've gotten some weird requests, and as long as it's not unsafe, I'll try it for them. Yeah. I don't care.
You got the money. I'm willing to do it.
That Bill Lockridge one time, he had a video from Colt back in like the national match days where they took high-speed film on a muzzle crown and they cut it to all these different angles to see which one would get the gas most consistently away from the base of the bullet when it left the end of the muzzle. And they settled on 11 degrees. And then I started doing barrel work, and Royce Weddle, who built a metric ton of PPC guns in the 70s, he always used an 11-degree cutter. And I said, why? And he goes, well, that's just what we use. And I'm like, atypical, like crotchety old cop armor / gunsmith. Like, why 11? Why not 12 or 10 and a half? Or he goes, well, that's what cutter I got. That's what we use.
Yeah.
And he built 2 or 3 national champion guns. So I was like, yeah, he's on to something. So,
I don't know that the angle of the crown is that important, as long as it's a good sharp crown and it's concentric with the bore of the barrel.
Yeah.
I think that escaping gas behind the bullet being uniform, regardless of whether it's coming out, through a gradual taper or if it's even coming out from a flat crown, I don't think that's nearly as important as the other end of the barrel on a revolver for the forcing cone. I think that forcing cone is very important, and I think it's also an area that's overlooked a lot. Guys will cut them and they'll leave tooling marks in them and things like that. And then when the tooling marks are there, then the lead builds up in them a lot faster.
Yeah.
And then the guns will start to get sluggish early. And, I cut them just shy of tolerance. And then I lap them with a brass lap.
Yeah.
That way they're nice and smooth, and there's,
Yep.
that lead buildup isn't as much of an issue.
Yep. That's the way you got to do it.
Brass lap. I've got one. And we used to, Royce used to take a piece of emery cloth on a mandrel that he had that he would put like 1,000 grit emery cloth on. And
I've tried several different ways. I'll take that brass lap and I'll actually put some lapping compound on it, like some Clover 3/0 or 4/0 lapping compound, and I'll run it through the barrel and I'll stick a cordless drill on it. Bzz, and I've used emery paper too. It's all
does the same thing.
Yeah, you just got to be cautious not to round the edges and get into the rifling a little bit if you don't want to. You just got to go slow and take your time.
Yep.
There's a million ways to skin a cat. I'm not dead set on any one particular way for anything, really.
Yeah. That answered my question on the forcing cone, angle. That one always kind of mystified me as to like, why do they make other angle cutters if 11 degrees is kind of what everybody, or kind of the commonly accepted best practice. So,
well, what's interesting about that, not to spin off the topic, but I've seen some single action revolvers that had some real aggressive forcing cones, like almost 45 degrees, very shallow and very steep. And I was never really quite sure why they did that. I'm not a huge single action guy, so I don't know, but I've seen a few of them that were kind of odd, and I don't know why.
I've seen some of those old like 3-screw Rugers that were really shallow, and the chambers consequently were really tight. And then guys like Furman Garza and all them, they of course set a nice tapered forcing cone, and then they'll open the chambers up a little bit. But I don't know, maybe that was just the production at the time. Maybe they had a pre-cut forcing cone and they just cut the barrel length back, and that's what you ended up with.
Yeah, it could be. Furman is awesome. I love Furman to death. He's become a very good friend of mine over the years. When he was first getting started on making his sights, he used to call me a lot and ask me about how I fixture up some of my sights, and I love the fact that he took off with it and he's doing so well. That's awesome. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet him in person someday.
Yeah. I've known him via the internet for like 20 years and never shook his hand. So change that someday. Oh,
how about troubleshooting? What are things people should be considering when it comes to troubleshooting, or common things an end user may run into, and how to fix it?
How to fix it is take it to your gunsmith. You'll save a lot of trouble just by doing that.
Here's one. If your trigger pull all of a sudden gets very light, tighten the strain screw.
Yep.
They will loosen up. Or if you start getting light firing pin strikes, check the strain screw.
So one of them that I see a lot when you're cocking, and then you go to put your finger on there, and all of a sudden the hammer falls, but it doesn't fire. Essentially, it decocks. That's the single action sear has worn out. And basically you can test that also just by pushing on the back of the hammer. And if it drops too easily, about a pound of pressure, more than a pound of pressure, you might end up breaking something. But about a pound of pressure, and if it falls, that single action sear is worn out. I'd say 9 times out of 10, I can recut it without replacing the trigger. Dave, what's your experience on that? About the same?
Usually when I've seen hammer follow or hammer failure, if you want to call it that, was somebody had been into the gun previously and they'd messed around with the single action cock notch and it would push off, you know.
Yep.
I've never experienced it with the sear being too short or worn out. But there again, you know, there's a lot of weird things. I mean, I get surprised. I've been doing this a long time and I see weird stuff happen all the time. Yeah. I could tell you stories that could probably be an entire podcast.
Hey, Matt, from a general user standpoint, if you can't fix the problem with a, brass toothbrush or a toothbrush, some lube, and a small screwdriver, probably take it to a professional.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned the hard way.
But there's YouTube. What do you mean?
I know. I'm just saying.
And Dremels.
If cleaning it and tightening the screws up doesn't work, generally, these things, they tend not to malfunction or whatever. They tend to just break. When the time comes, something breaks. And what we've mostly seen in classes, where we're so East Coast Revolver event we just did, we had one cylinder rod backing out on a Colt, and the guy kind of just had to tighten that up every few iterations of stuff. Most of it, if you see a guy with a toothbrush hanging out of the back of their pants pocket, that's a serious revolver shooter, because that'll solve about most of your problems. Is just getting the dirt and crap out of from underneath the star, which Brian's showing right now, and getting it off the front of the cylinder and the forcing cone, and that'll solve most of it. You can also avoid a lot of problems with these simply by running the gun north and south, unloading and doing most of your stuff. Is keeping that gun northbound when you're getting rounds out of it and southbound when they're going in it. And that will also help a lot. It's you start gumming these up and getting debris down into places it shouldn't be when you start running the gun horizontal. So, a lot of it's pretty easy.
One I was going to mention, and I saw this, I saw some surprised faces when I was doing my little how-to maintenance block at the snub revolver roundup on the East Coast. Is I pulled a gun out and I was like, how many of you all lube the ejector or lube under here under the star on the rod? And like half the class, I'm like, all right, let's go over here to the berm and get your rags out and wipe all that lube off, because that will hang the gun up with a quickness. And surprisingly, none of them had done it there, but they were starting to get drag and all this stuff where that lube will catch debris, a piece of unburnt powder, and it'll lift the extractor off the rear of the cylinder a couple of thousandths and bind the gun up. And I had people going, oh, I was never told that, man. I'm like, keep that area dry, right? Like, the center pin, you can lube it, but only if you know how to take the cylinder apart. And they're like, what's the center pin? I'm like, okay, and we don't need to go into that. But that one, I've seen a lot of dudes, especially with snubs because they'll think, well, that'll make the rod easier to push or something, that little stubby rod. And I've seen some wicked bind ups on guns from that. And I've seen like this Colt came from the factory with lube under the star. And I was like, oh, well, gotta get rid of that. And, you know, if somebody didn't know any better and they just took it out and started shooting it, you know, how many rounds before they go, oh, I broke my brand new Colt Python? Like, well, no, you didn't break it. You just got debris under the star, right? But that one was one I saw a lot. So
for most of my average revolver customers, I tell them don't even use oil. The cleaner I recommend is Hoppy's number 9, just because it's always worked, and it's got enough lubricating
properties
to it to keep it taken care of. I've seen so many people that just like want to upend the oil bottle right down into the action, you know, thinking they're going to make things smoother, and it's like it collects grit, it collects gunk, it turns into lapping compound, it starts to wear things out, and then eventually it dries and gums up the gun. So my personal guns, I actually use gun grease inside the action, but I also routinely do a full strip and clean to make sure I keep them operating, you know, properly. But that's because I'm the gunsmith and that's what I do.
Yeah, I try to get, you know, 500 rounds or more. I'll peel a gun down to pins and parts, and I tend to like those synthetic lubes like Liberty, Gunfighter, stuff like that. That's got not a lot of petroleum base in it, because that stuff doesn't turn into varnish in the gun. Yeah, Slip 2000. Is that the Pat Rogers issued bottle there? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
that's the one question I hate the most is people ask, you know, because they always think the gunsmith is going to know what the best one out there is. I use the best one that I can get the most economically. And so for me, that's Hoppy's number 9 for cleaning, and it's Lucas gun oil for oil. Just, I mean, it's just, you know, I go through such a volume of it.
Right.
It doesn't pay for me to hunt around to see, you know, especially coming out of the old frog lube days, which was, sorry, I don't know if anybody likes frog lube, but it was such a gimmick. I couldn't even get into it.
They don't. No one does.
Okay, good.
Well, what I found was most of those synthetic lubricants are, you know, you'd be just as good with some 0W10 Mystic motor oil. You know,
Valvoline VR1
zero weight
oil.
Mobile One. Zero weight Mobile One. I mean, it's expensive, but a quart of that will last you for freaking ever.
Yeah. And I went through the gamut with, you know, all the way back to the Miltech days and CLP and all this other stuff. And I got a buddy that he's got a lubricant company, and he sent me a couple of like 2-ounce bottles. I've had them for like 5 years, and I'm like, this stuff's so good, you're going to like put yourself out of business, because I don't have to buy it very often. And with revolvers, you know, they're a pretty closed system. You know, you got the firing pin hole, you got the cylinder stop hole around the cylinder. And then if you got an exposed hammer gun, you got the hammer well or the slot, and you got the trigger slot. Not a whole lot of places that gunk is just going to fall into, except the hammer slot, right? And looking at this Colt, you know, it's got some gaps around it, but not nearly to the degree that people think it is. And a lot of those internal components, as long as you got some form of lubricant on it. And I like to take like students, if I've got them for a couple of days, I'll pop the side plate off a gun and go, look, you don't need to take anything out of it. Don't cock the gun. Don't do anything, but use your little rag and wipe some of the parts down that you can get, brush it out, and then take a needle oiler and put it on the contact points, and then put the gun back together and call it a day. And
I would recommend taking the strain off the mainspring.
Yeah, on
Smiths, so you don't
Smiths.
snap that hammer stud.
Yeah,
It's just a precaution because it sucks when they snap.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive when they snap.
And I've been fortunate. I'm going to knock on something here. I've only snapped one, and it was on a gun that the thing had bent. How that happened, I have no idea. But I put a fitted rod over it to straighten it back out, and it went. And it felt like it was made out of like a Lodge cast iron skillet material. It was pretty.
They usually get bent when somebody drops them on a hammer.
Yeah,
If somebody dropped it and it hit a hammer, that'll bend the hammer pin.
And it was a Bangor era gun, so I've seen some eras of those that the hammer pins and the trigger pin and even the rebound slide, the stop for the spring stop on the back were pretty soft.
Mm-hmm.
But your mileage may vary.
So speaking of getting some work done, I know I've either read or heard Darryl talk about getting a pound puppy of some sort come in and like, this is going to be great. It's a great range gun. And then you send it off and get work done. You're like, oh, well, I want to treat it nice now because it's a nice gun. But especially for Dave and Scott and obviously Darryl, Bryan as well, what would be, because Dave, I've been on your site. Scott, I hadn't before. I apologize, but I went on and you've got your a la carte list of, I can, go spurless hammer for this much. I can do this. I can do these things. What would be your practical upgrades or practical work that you would suggest that someone might be interested in getting on a revolver? Either a new one, you go pick up an old Model 10 like we always talk about. What does work like that look like? Maybe starting from the most basic to something maybe a little bit higher end.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in packages. I do offer everything a la carte, but I have also packages. For the person who's just getting into revolvers, like you just got your first one, especially if you've got a J-frame, my level 1 trigger and action job. I'm going to change out the springs. I'm going to put in an extended firing pin. You're going to get the gun back, and it's going to be smoother, lighter, and higher performing than you ever thought it could be. After that, we're looking at performance increases. So replacing the cylinder stop and the hand with better quality ones. I use the Power Custom upgrades for that. And then even more longevity, we can upgrade the hammer and the trigger and stuff like that. It all depends on, if you're a competitive shooter, yeah, you're going to want my level 3 because you're going to be hammering that gun and you want the highest quality parts. Outside of just like a basic trigger job, I would say grips. Check out a few different types of grips. Go find some people that have different revolvers and see what you like and see what you don't. Because the ones that usually come with the gun are never all that great. And then after that, sights. It's both front and rear. I like the Bowen. My personal preference to convert guns to is the Bowen DX front sight so that I can interchange front sights quickly for any type of situation I might be going into. If I'm going, hunting in the dark forest of Alaska, I can put in a tritium fiber optic sight that's going to glow and I'm going to be able to see it. If I'm going to a barbecue and I want a fancy gold bead on there, I can put that in there. I can just put a different sight in for whatever situation I want to. And their rough country rear sight is just a beautifully made, rock solid sight. It puts the Smith & Wesson sight to shame. It really does. So I'd say basics, level 1 trigger job from my packages. Grips, sights, probably in that order.
Well, I agree mostly with what Scott said. The difference between his business and mine is I don't do packages generally. I do have a few, but not many. But it really depends on the shooter and it depends on the intended purpose of the gun. If somebody's going to put it in their sock drawer and keep it beside your bed for a defensive sidearm, it doesn't need $2,000 worth of custom work done to it. And I tell people all the time, I'm not here just to take your money. I want to make sure that the gun that you end up with when you're done is going to meet your needs. So for me, I spend a lot of time on the phone talking to the customer, seeing what they're going to do with it, seeing what their intended purpose is, how experienced they are, and what type of gun are we dealing with? Are we dealing with an old pre-model Smith & Wesson, or are we dealing with a new 686 plus? Because that's going to change it as well. A lot of times people will call and ask me advice as far as which one to buy, which firearm to buy. And I always try to convince people to stay away from Taurus. Now, I understand Taurus is getting better, but for a long time, Taurus was not good. And I had a lot of bad experiences with them over the years, not releasing any parts. So I have always predominantly steered people away. Now, if they are getting better, I'm glad to hear that. We need more quality firearms in the industry. And if that is true, then I will change my attitude about it. But it really depends on, what the intended purpose is, and what the experience level of the shooter is. Will depend on what I suggest should be done to it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, he's spot on there. Also, he's also right with it depends on the gun. I mean, if you're getting an older police trade-in revolver, you're going to need a little bit more work. I mean, you're probably going to have an end shake issue. You're probably going to have a timing issue. Little things like that need to be addressed. So, and I agree with them with the Taurus. I will say is I might have a little bit of insights on that because Dave, you said you're not general gunsmithing for a while. I still general gunsmith, and I have not seen a Taurus revolver come in with issues in a hot minute.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So that does, when people ask me, it's like, well, what's the best guns out there? It's like, I don't usually go by performance. I go by, well, how often do I see this gun come across my bench? And it used to be Taurus was a lot. And so I'd always tell people, stay away from Taurus. Kel-Tec and Carr are ones I stay away from because I see them too much. I won't even look at a high point anymore. They're great until they break, and then once they break, they're done.
Well, High Point's literally about 2 hours from me, so I just tell them to send it back to High Point. They'll replace it for free.
Yeah,
I don't even want it in here.
I won't even clean High Points. I mean, it's like I won't even take them apart to clean them.
Well, the deal with Taurus now, we Darryl and I have done a fair amount of consulting with them, and their QC is on point now to a degree. They're even beating one of our favorite manufacturers out pretty handily. And the other piece of it, one of the reasons you're probably not seeing them is, and I'll give the credit to Brett Voorhees, their CEO.
100%.
He completely cleaned their warranty department up. So their deal now, I haven't heard of anybody that's had a problem with one that sent it back that didn't either get a certificate for a new gun or their gun back in working order in under 2 weeks. So, and there was a period of time where it was like 2 and 3 years. And when they moved up to Bainbridge, Brett just like threw the accelerator down on getting their warranties done. Yeah. They're making some fantastic guns now at a price point. So, it's manage your expectations, right? Like it's still a price point gun. But their reject rate is so low now. It's unreal. And I was like, really, you want me to come to the factory? Okay, whatever. But Darryl and I made a trip, and I was exceedingly impressed with the way that they're handling warranty, QC. You're not going to see parts out there because you don't have to.
Very
They're,
few manufacturers are releasing parts these days.
yeah.
It is a weird thing.
But to your point, Scott, one of my biggest issues that I had with Taurus over the years, now, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. Years ago, they wouldn't release any parts.
Yeah.
I mean, I called them for a front sight post. Oh no, we won't send that out because it's got a lifetime guarantee. Just send it back in. Well, the customer didn't want to do that because he had heard all the horrible rumors. I'm going to send my gun in to get a front sight, and it's going to be 6 months before I get it back.
Yep.
And that they, unlike Smith and Wesson, they didn't change their design that much, so they still had plenty of parts in inventory, or at least I suspect they did. And they could have serviced our industry a little bit, and they just flat wouldn't. And I said, okay, well, if you won't service guys like me, if you won't sell me parts, then you need to get your return rates up because your customers are getting pissed. You send a gun in to get fixed. It's just got a simple minor problem, and it's taking you 6 months to fix it. The customers are getting mad.
Yeah.
And I won't even talk about their semi-auto line of pistols. Oh my word, they were absolutely horrible for a few years there.
Yeah.
So I've stayed away from them. So maybe I shouldn't even be talking about them because I do understand that they are getting better, and that really makes me happy to hear that.
Yeah,
it does, and maybe I'll change my tune about it. But like I said, there for a while. Oof.
And not to,
I can tell you right now, their warranty on what's going on in customer service with people calling in to have warranty done, customer service repairs, whatever, that is live in the CEO's office.
Oh, wow.
So whatever's going on down in warranty or when you call into Taurus and they've got 20 something odd live people there taking those calls, and their computers are up and what's in the queue and all of that, that is live streamed into the CEO's office while that is going on live. That's how seriously Brett takes warranty and repair now. And so, I tested it. I had a gun, got 90 something rounds through it. It had a burr in the star, ended up fouling the gun up, and cold called them in, got it back in my hands in 7 days. Fixed.
Nice.
At a $300 and something price point.
Yeah.
Okay, that's in that level. I tell people for Tauruses, don't buy those to do custom work on it. To me, they're disposable guns.
Yeah,
when I buy them and I beat the living tar out of them.
Right.
With the expectation, if I break it, I'm going to call them up, and either they're going to send me a new one or fix the one I got, and that's all I can ask for out of it. I send beautiful guns. I have taken more Pound Puppy, Puerto Rican police trade-ins, in New York Brinks trade-ins. I have 2 Yost guns that were Brinks 64s, which is a sad state of affairs when you sit there and go, did I just spend $2,500 of work on a 64?
Oh, yeah.
So I am the king of doing that, but I have different levels. For most people, for your fire extinguisher gun, I want to go in, not spend a lot of money, just have the gun work. Taurus is a very, very good option, particularly in revolvers right now for that. Go buy an 856 or an 856 ultralight or something like that and be done with it. It's great for what it is. And we've had them in classes. We have had no problems with them. I have several. Brian's got them. We use them. We beat them up. Don't particularly care.
If TSA loses it, I go.
Who cares? Yeah, right. Whatever. I'll call Caleb and send me another one. On the other side of that, if you want a really nice Taurus, the executive line is everything you could ever ask for.
Okay, I didn't even know they had that.
They are hand built in a clean room. I mean, they are the performance center of Taurus that costs the same as everybody else's normal gun does.
Really?
So my thing is, if you want a custom Taurus, just get an executive. If you want a regular Taurus, just buy one, and they're workhorse guns. Now, if you want to move into the other custom stuff, for Nate, I'll add my take on this. I'm just going to do a John Helms quote. I need a gun. I can see the sights. I can manage the trigger, and the gun's 100% reliable. That's the John Helms thing, and I don't care what gun that is. And being I own John's revolvers, his SIS guns, they all have visible sights on them, whether it's paint, whatever he had to do, because they're like issue guns or agency required guns. Agency Armor, who was a master at action jobs, they've got great street triggers, which I call a good smooth trigger that doesn't have to be horribly light. It just has to be clean and smooth. And the guns are incredibly reliable. Oftentimes, one of the things, Bryan just went through this for me yesterday. Gee, Bryan, what did we do? chamfered cylinders, Harrison snake sights. Bryan went in, cleaned the action, didn't lighten anything up, just cleaned it, just cleaned some burrs off and a little polishing here and there, a little emery cloth. And Bryan left me with my 1,000 grit emery cloth to try to get my trigger so I can get the serrations out of it, or just round it a little, because these things are horrible for that. But that's what we generally do to these for a working gun. And, you know, that's what you need to do. There's some of the should do's, polishing chambers or cylinder holes really helps if you're running the gun hard on getting brass in, brass out.
Yep. Chamfering the chamber holes.
Yep. Muzzle crowns on those trade-in guns. Nelson Ford did a 28 for me, a Pound Rescue $400 highway patrolman. That is one of the best shooting guns I own now, with a Nelson Ford action job, and Nelson crowned the muzzle. When I sent the gun to him, he goes, "Look, trust me on this. Let me crown the muzzle on this gun," you know, and it is an absolute laser beam gun. So some of those are your should do's. And then when you start getting into wants, when you really get some understanding of this, that's where you start getting into Bowen, DNL, CS sights, some of the better sight systems out there to improve that. We like particularly the Harrison stuff. You know, some of the better grade of the action jobs. But that's when you can't get deep in action jobs till you get deep in ammo, to sort of make sure you know what your gun's going to run or where you're at running stuff. My street guns tend to be pretty reliable on the ammo because I don't always know what I'm going to get for ammo out there. I mean, my pet stuff gets pet ammo. So some of this, and then you get to the point when you become sort of a connoisseur of these things. You know, Dave's Custom Creations is called Custom Creations for a reason. I mean, some of this stuff is just wicked cool stuff. Slab sight in the Revolver doesn't do a thing for it, but it looks cool as hell.
Yeah.
You know, some of the custom cut in the barrels, rounding out some of the grip work, some of that's all cool stuff. You don't need it, but it's awesome. You know, so again, you kind of just
Custom
level
finishes.
this stuff. Yeah, custom finishes is always a good one, depending on what you're going to put the gun through. You know, something like this. This is my wife's new Python. You know, the high polish on the stainless, great. You know, engraving doesn't hurt them. You know, I've got guns that are full NP3'd. I got some that are, some of my old hardworking guns are NP3'd internally and on the cylinders, so it's easy to clean them. That was sort of a thing. So a lot of this hard chrome, DLCs, some of the finished stuff is great. Not a massive fan of Cerakote on these as something I would use for anything other than covering up problems. You can take some rust bucket pound puppies, hard bead blast, and some Cerakote. You can do some wonderful stuff. High-end gun, I'm probably going DLC or something like that. So again, this starts to just lever up. But for most people starting out, get the trigger manageable and get the gun reliable and get something on a front sight so you can see it. And then you can kind of cater that up from there.
I have a question for Dave.
Yes, sir.
Just because, talking with somebody with, as much experience, I've been doing it for 17 years. You've been doing it for, you said 25. Have you found when you do the same polish and honing work on action jobs that you'll get different results depending on the material the frame is?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's not just me then.
No.
The steel frames come out the best. The aluminum's second. The scandiums are third.
Yeah, I won't do very much to the scandium guns because the damn things break really easy if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, aside from just maybe throwing springs in the scandium gun, I won't go too far in depth on the action jobs on those because I mean, they're great for what they are. Don't get me wrong, but as far as doing much custom work on the scandiums, I stay away from them because
I don't touch the frames at all, but I'll still polish the hammer and trigger and stuff like that. Because
I'll do that too. But like I say, I just don't get too crazy. And the one thing I found too, especially in the really lightweight framed in the J's, a lot of the internal components on those guns were lightened as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go getting a little crazy with your spring, with your hammer spring and your rebound spring, they won't fire.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason the bill came up with the longer firing pin nose was to help with that detonation problems.
Yep.
But boy, some of them things are finicky, and you start dropping them spring weight, and boy, they sure get rough.
Yep.
And we're in an era right now where even the manufacturers of ammunition that we used to love for primer reliability and these have softer primers than these, and we can get a lighter action. I think those days are behind us. And I've had conversations with a lot of gunsmiths that, 10 years ago would set, like a Model 10 action at X poundage. And now they can't. They're having to up the spring weights to make them reliable.
I've found 8 pounds is about good for reliability. Some of my competition shooters that are using their specific primers and stuff like that,
they're ramming federal primers as deep as they can go.
When they leave me, they're at 8 pounds, but when they come back to me from the competition shooters, they've usually got it readjusted and it's almost down to 6. And I'm like, I don't know what you're getting to fire at 6 pounds, but okay.
Yeah. And these, I'm going to talk about the Python real quick for just a second, but one of the things I saw with this, they don't necessarily have a light trigger, but it's incredibly smooth. They changed the hammer spring from a V spring, like a old single action black powder gun, to a U shape at the bottom to keep the stacking down. And that gun, you can tell the CNC work inside of it is like flawless. When I looked at it, I was like, ooh, wish some other manufacturers would take notes here. But when it comes to currently produced revolvers right now, I tell people there's like 3 that I think are out of the box are solid. And one is your price point Taurus, the 856 line, especially. That line seems to be really, really solid. And it's kind of the D-frame Colt Detective Special size gun. Next would be Ruger, the LCRs, the GP100s, the SP101s. Not the greatest triggers out of the box, but they're bomb-proof. And they don't seem to have QC. They have some QC issues, like cosmetic occasionally and stuff like that. But as far as the guns actually functioning, they're spot on. And then at the top of the rung is, for U.S. produced, is the new Colt lines. They're really knocking it out of the park. And I mean, literally like 15 minutes with a couple of stones inside of this one, knocking a couple of edges off. I was like, man, how do you argue with that? With Smith and Wessons, I really prefer like the pre-lock stuff. And there's some good runs of lock guns out there, the 640s, 630 or 649s with the lock. They were pretty good. But
the steel end frames, even with the lock, most of those are really good,
But my favorite run of them is the 10-8. I love 10-8s. I think that's like God's gift.
That's what this is.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's
the last one you kept. Yep.
I've got like 9 of them, and they're all most of them police trade-in guns or somebody's sock drawer gun, but they're heavy barrel. It's the first one they went full black oxide on. The heat treat is the same as the Model 13s. So, and they tend to be pretty consistent. I've not had one single 10-8 that wouldn't shoot, that would not group. And I don't know why that is, but there again, like Nate was talking about, well, what would I buy? And I'm like, I would hesitate to tell somebody just go find a 10-8 if they weren't a revolver guy that, knew how to take them apart and maybe put a power custom shim in them or something like that. I wouldn't hesitate to tell somebody go buy an 856, which I never thought I would utter the phrase, that's a really nice Taurus.
Is it a 6-shot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's basically it's kind of a modern day Colt Agent.
Yeah.
If I had to put a classic spin on it, it's a modern day Colt Agent. Not a great finish. It's the lower end kind of utility finish, lightweight, 6-shot, 38. Pretty bare bones simple, and they just go bang.
Now you're going to make me go check them out.
Yeah, for a walloping sub $400, like why not? And that's
I really haven't had an issue with the lock, the post lock Smith and Wessons for the most part. I haven't seen anything that has been defective on them that I haven't seen on older ones.
Yeah.
Now, currently, Smith is in a little bit of trouble, but I'm trying to give them a little grace because they just moved their factory. And I worked for Weatherby when they moved their factory, so I know how things go when you're trying to train an entire new staff. And when you lose people that have experience. So I'm trying to give Smith & Wesson a little bit of grace. I think they need to support their armorers a little more because, it's like, yeah, you lost all the staff that really knew their stuff. So lean on your armorers that know their stuff. But as far as quality, I mean, this is a 637 J frame. I call it the constant companion gun. It's a full package gun that I do, new grips, new front sight, bob the hammer, recontour the trigger, beveled, polished, from one end to the other. And I love those guns,
Yeah. Darryl and I did a fair amount of consulting on the UC gun. I just picked up another 642, 442. They did away with the lock, but one of the things I thought was kind of genius about this gun was they brought down some of the good parts of the Scandium guns, like some of the good manufacturing techniques from the Scandium guns, and brought it down to their alloy line. And there's been some hiccups, but I
ran into one with that 686 with the cylinder.
Yeah. And I think, their revolvers are still being built in Massachusetts, but the bulk of their experienced staff went to, outside of Nashville or whatever that is. But yeah, the days of like Jimmy Ray in the Performance Center and Walt Alphabet back there cranking out masterpieces of guns is kind of beyond us. And even in the days when I got into revolvers in the early 00s, well, before that, but when I got into working on them, Jim Ray was about to retire, and that was like 2006. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do with the performance center, because basically all their really, really good line assemblers went to the performance center, and all those guys were aging out, Yeah. And the cost of labor nowadays is so unbelievably high that, these companies, people go, oh, everything's MIM and drop in. Well, it has to be, or these revolvers are beat $4,000 or more.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, my level 3 trigger and action job, it's with parts, it's like a $600 package. So, I mean, think about if Smith & Wesson was doing what I was doing, to a 686, I mean, you're talking about a $2,000 gun now.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a reason Manurins are expensive.
Yeah. So the reason course are expensive.
Let me try to add a little bit of history to that too, for people that, Bryan and I, one of the things we laugh about is when people sit there and they're pining for the days of those 1980s Smith & Wessons.
Yeah.
Guns were crap. They weren't really good. Just because I was there.
Thank you.
Trust me, I was there. So I worked my first job in this industry in college. I worked for Ruger's West Coast law enforcement distributor. So Smith was our competition. I was there when in the wars with the GP100 versus the 686. CS1s. The custom CS1 that collectors glom over as this ultimate thing. I was there when they were issuing them to customs. They were the customs called them the chicken shit ones because they were so bad.
I found one of those in a pawn shop.
Yeah, and what a lot of people forget is in those eras, Smith & Wesson had warranty stations all over the country.
Yep.
So you didn't call Smith and return your gun to Smith. You took it to a warranty station if it was close. Like if you were anywhere in Southern California, there was a couple warranty stations, and you got a crap gun. You just went in and they fixed it. Now the dudes who worked at those warranty stations, let me tell you, you want to talk about some serious gunsmiths, and it was because of volume. Anybody who had experience working in those warranty stations, when it comes to being able to do some serious diagnostic troubleshooting and stuff, they're good. And they would also do some weird stuff. So like you'd get a gun that it didn't shoot, it had the barrel was crap or it wasn't sized right, or something. And I've seen some weird stuff like, hey, we'll just go in the back. I got a 1950s 44 special barrel. I'll put that in it and your gun got warranted, I mean, it's like, yeah, it was some crazy stuff, and the 80s were a little wild with this stuff, and so people forget that the warranty support was supported locally in a lot of those places, and every one of those police armorers was fully factory supported through the armorers school. The reason Smith put so many police contracts in is because they were bought and paid for in every one of these agencies. The police armorers in those agencies are sitting on a Smith & Wesson mat with their Smith & Wesson coffee cup, with their clock and their Smith banner and their Smith & Wesson gun. They built themselves at the factory. You couldn't undo a lot of that stuff. They had really, really good support to maintain the guns and people who could actually work on them. Well, all of that's gone. I mean, that's not how we do stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So you get some of this reputation that everybody is pining for. LAPD had a guy who used to work up at the academy or the firearms unit, who would do action jobs for like, $30 or whatever it was. And, you'd go drop your gun off with some money and we'll go to lunch and come back. And here you go. And I mean, and the guy basically never paid for a lunch his entire career. on doing, and the action jobs, I got several guns with them, are fantastic because these guys were literally gunsmiths.
Yeah.
And they could sit there and go, oh, well, it's out of time or it needs a new hand or something. And they go in the back of the office and they got bins of parts. And, you know, as Dave was saying, nobody in today's litigious world now, because of lawsuits, liability, lawyers, all this stuff, the factories won't let those parts out because they have no control over who's installing them. It's one thing if one of you guys is installing them. The problem is Bobby YouTube is out there trying to do a YouTube ad. Well, I can do it on my Glock. How many Glocks become unreliable from gunsmithing? You know, because people think that installing parts on Glock is gunsmithing now.
Yeah.
You know, how many
building
problems,
ARs.
Yeah, how many problems are we seeing with Glocks due to tolerance stacking? I'm like, when did that become a 1911? Yeah, it was when people started working on them is when they became 1911s, you know. So, you know, people sometimes pine for a myth or not having the full context on this. So a lot of this is, you know, if you're going to get the work done, get it done by competent people. And that's usually not horrifically cheap. You know, these guns are labor intensive. It's not just popping a pin and throwing some plastic parts in the thing and go, "Ooh, there you go, new action." You know, that's not how this works. And people just got to sort of accept that. And it's become a difficult thing. And then, you know, these people show up in class with their Craptastic Master 5000, and then inevitably they show up with somebody's favorite sponsored ammo from overseas with real hard primers. You know, they got a strain screw backed out as far as it'll go. They did an action job. It's got like a 4-pound double action trigger to mimic their Glock because I somehow don't know. Nobody ever taught me how to actually operate a real revolver trigger. So they're coddled with these like super lightweight triggers, and then the thing doesn't go bang. And then they get on the internet and go, revolvers aren't reliable. It's all BS. It's a myth, you know, and they become famous on, you know, it's all stupid.
Yeah.
I just went full Steve Fisher. It's all stupid.
I get so many guys. I've got so many customers that if it's not pinned and recessed, it's a crappy Smith.
Right. And, you know, I like that stuff for the, and I divide that stuff into things I love to collect, things I love to carry. Yeah. And, you know, this is the kind of stuff that's with me 24/7. Yeah. This is a Y custom. Custom a gunsmith of the century. That's the first tie cylinder you see. That's 432 tie. But, you know, I half the time I'm living with this or 22 LCR. Yeah. You know, that's dead stock out of the box. There's nothing done to it other than me sitting in a recliner going.
Well, it's like, you know, this is my personal 66 and it's in my daily carry cycle. I got 3 guns that I use as a main gun and I cycle through them. And it's a pinned and recessed 66-1. And honestly, I'm considering changing out the cylinder to one that's not recessed just because it's faster to load. I can bevel it and it's faster to load.
I'll sell you an older one or a newer one if you feel the need to do that.
No, I'm not getting rid of the gun.
I'll trade you
because I can interchange parts and not have an issue. I have that skill.
So,
but you know,
it took me 2 years of looking before I could found this gun that I could afford, and I got it by trading a Springfield mil-spec 1911 for it. So I think I did pretty good.
So here's a tricky one for you. What does the pin do?
Okay, so back in the day, before they could where they didn't have as good of metallurgy, and you couldn't really torque on the frame as much, they would screw the barrel on, and there's not much torque holding it on, so they put a pin in there to lock the barrel in place so it can't unscrew.
You know what I was told from Smith & Wesson? You know what the pin does? What? Nothing.
It fills a hole in the barrel.
It fills a hole in the frame. And I heard that too. That was the original explanation.
Yeah.
And back on the pre-model number guns, that held true. They carried that over after the model number guns, and they started doing like real heat treat on the guns and stuff like that. Half of those pins from the model number guns don't even touch the barrel. You get in there and they don't, like, they wallered the freaking hole out so bad. All that pin does is just set in there, and it touches
how many times have you driven one of those pins out and the pin's bent?
Yeah.
It's bent because the pin is smaller than the hole it's in, so they bent it so it would stay in there.
Yep.
I've seen that, but I've also taken those out, and it was very easy to unscrew the barrels too.
Yeah.
So I've seen.
Well, and this gets back to, that leads into something that maybe is a good lead into these things. So on the UCs, one of the things they did on this is, these are basically now kind of that PC gun getting assembled on a regular line that's available to on a regular thing. So the 2-piece barrel was one of those things when this gun was released that we had all this heartache about. Oh my God, it's going to a 2-piece barrel. And I'm like, okay, geniuses, here's the problem. On the old school stuff, when they set the barrel, here's what you get. You either get perfect cylinder gap or you get a perfect front sight at 12 o'clock. You usually didn't get both. You know what I mean? That was always a bit of a rarity that you get one or the other, but not both.
So
and
I kind of agree, but not really, because I've gotten new barrels from Smith & Wesson, and they're usually long and need to be fitted.
Right.
And, but you know what I'm saying is that a lot of times they're skosh clocked or whatever, or they're dead nuts on, and you might have a little more cylinder gap than you want, or too close or whatever. With these 2-piece guns, we have found these things are consistent on cylinder gap, and the front sight's always at 12 o'clock. I'm like, some of this newer stuff is actually kind of good.
Sure.
To make the gun for a functional working gun fairly easy with modern manufacturing techniques.
Absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. The issue that I have with the 2-piece barrels has absolutely zero to do with the end user. I can't get the damn barrels off.
Right.
Yes. Thank you. That's the same reason why I hate them, is because I like to modify barrels. I want to, if I've got a 6-inch barrel and I want to cut it down to 3 inches, I want to do that.
There is a tool that exists for that.
How do I get my hands on one?
Well, there's a gunsmith in Nebraska that made a few of them. Who, taught me to do 1911 work, but he made a few of them. I don't know if he's manufactured one in a while, but it locks into the freaking rifling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I'm like, ooh, that's a labor intensive operation. But
and I think
the alloy guns with the single barrel, or the alloy guns. One of the big problems we had with the alloy guns, you had too much flash gap, there's nothing you can do, because trying to torque one of those barrels in is a good way to snap a frame. Yeah. And that goes even all the way back to the Model 12s. If the barrel wasn't clocked in, or.
Then explain to me why they did it for the 219 and 220. I'm sorry, 619 and 620.
Which ones were those?
Those were short-lived guns that were. They're basically the 681 and the 686, but with the half underlug instead of a full underlug. So it looked almost identical to Model 10s and Model 13s, but stainless steel.
And they did what on them?
They were sleeved barrels.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, not a lot of people know about those models, but they're out there, and it's weird to see them.
But
it's a 686.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like in the vein of that 327 they're doing now that has the way it was explained to me when that 2-piece deal came out was, one, the barrel they were able to hold the concentricity of that thing really, really well. And the rifling is like EDM'd. It's perfect. But they could, when they mate that shroud up, the shroud has a little kit on the end of it that plugs into the frame.
Yeah.
So they're able to kind of self-fixture it.
Yeah.
And they set them to the same torque. I mean, it was a consistency and manufacturing thing.
Yeah.
And they did it on those large frame guns. And those were or larger frame guns. And those were some of the most accurate guns they ever put together. The other deal was the alloy, screwing them into an alloy frame. You can actually replace the barrels on an alloy frame because you're not putting all the torque down there on the inlet threads. The torque is actually being held at the end of the muzzle.
I get it with an alloy frame. I do.
The steel guns, that was a complete, from what I understand, talking to some of the dudes that are long since retired and dead now, it was kind of an accuracy in manufacturing experiment because they could squeeze a lot of accuracy out of a gun without having to use lead babbitts and reamers and cutters and all that. They just plug them together. And I'm surprised they haven't carried that on with like the modern 686s.
Yeah, well, don't give them any ideas.
Well, from the
like Dave said though, for the end user,
yeah,
I think it's good for the end users. It really is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to think. I remember as a brandy new cop, I bought a Model 13 3-inch, was my backup off-duty third gun. I'd wear it into work, and I'd put it appendix, and then I'd put my duty rig over it with a triple speed loader pouch with a 13 behind it, but it was my off-duty as well. And I remember it shot a little right or left or something, and I bring it into the armorer, and I'm like, hey, this is, what do we do to fix that? And he goes, leave. I'm like, what do you mean leave? Because I was a gun guy. I wanted to see what he did. He goes, you don't want to see this.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. He goes, you know what? You could probably sit outside, but you're not going to be in the armory when I do it. He clamps that thing, and we had a thing called the Chavez Miracle Vise, which was named after the armorer I would never let touch one of my guns. And this guy, this guy's a sponsored shooter by Krieghoff and stuff. He was good. And all I hear is this horrific banging, like he's hitting it with a sledgehammer. And I kind of peek my head around, and if the one thing you never want to see a gunsmith do is babbit your brand new gun into a line, and then he hands it to me, handful of ammo, and goes, go out on the range. So I did. It was right on the money. Now I want you to think about walking into like Bass Pro today with your revolver that won't shoot, or any of your local gun shops with some kid behind the counter. You really want them babbiting a gun into shape to, all of a sudden having that front sight at 12 o'clock for the consumer in today's world is probably pretty good. and then leaving you guys to take 6-inch highway patrolmen and turn them into cool 3-inch customs,
right.
Or 4-inch 64s. And make cool things out of them.
Yeah.
And just leave these 2-piece barrel things for the today's typical consumer of a revolver.
I just saw a comment pop up that said, I have reservations about babbiting. Oh yeah, no kidding. It's a hair-raising operation, but
well,
it doesn't work.
For Smith & Wesson, the 2-piece barrel thing was actually a very smart move. Because it eases their manufacturing process. They saw an increase in accuracy, and like I say, for the end user, it's going to be better, and it's going to be better for Smith & Wesson to sell the guns. But like I say, from my perspective, and I'm sure Scott feels the same way.
Yep.
I had a contact at Smith & Wesson, and I was talking to him because I was trying to find a tool that would engage in the rifling so I could get the damn barrel shroud off. And he says, oh, you can't remove the barrels on those. This was a 64. And I said, really? He says, oh, yeah, those take a special wrench. And I said, yeah, I'm trying to buy the special wrench. And he goes, without that wrench, you can't get the barrel shroud off. And I said, I have a milling machine. I'll get it off. So I cut the end of the barrel off, and I got the shroud off, and I got the inner part of the barrel off. And then I put a regular standard. I had to mill the indexing tab or whatever you want to call it that's on the frame. I had to mill that off, and then I could put a regular barrel on it. I just went ahead and threaded it and timed it like you normally would. And I realized guys like me, Smith and Wesson doesn't care about guys like me.
Yeah.
They're making guns to sell to the consumer.
Who knows? Down the road, maybe that's a thing. It isn't like we don't know the right people to talk to. Maybe that's something they ought to look at in the future. Is actually, it's like almost like they used to deliver, where you could buy a race car, a car in the white, basically. To turn into a race car. Is wouldn't it be great if they could maybe start selling gunsmith only, where it's a frame and whatever kit, let you guys do your thing and give you a base thing to work out of. It might be an interesting thing as sort of a means to replace the custom shop, with supporting the custom gunsmith industry with something like that. Who knows? Maybe that's something to get looked at down the road, as being able to be certified to build custom smiths.
It would be really great if they did something like that. I only see two problems with it. The first one being litigation, the litigious society that we live in. That would be the first one, of course. And the other one is the gunsmithing world is becoming so small that it probably wouldn't be beneficial enough financially for Smith & Wesson to even offer a program like that, or whoever. It doesn't have to be Smith.
Especially with guys, finding guys like Dave and myself that actually can work on revolvers. It's
it's a few and far between, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I mean, there's another gunsmith here in town. He went to the same school I did. Anytime somebody's got a revolver problem, he sends them to me. Because he just doesn't do them. He does the Glocks, he does the ARs and all that stuff. He doesn't do the revolvers. And it's like, that's cool. I send him some stuff here and there just because I don't got time to deal with it, and he likes it.
Really surprised me last week. We have a good relationship right now with all the revolver manufacturers. There's a couple of them we don't have contacts with, but the big four, and I had a customer, a friend of ours, that came to a deal, and he had a Colt Cobra with the older style ejector rod that had the knurling that would fit down it. And I was like, man, it's just it's a replacement part. I mean, it's not a big deal. So I spend 2.5 hours on the phone, finally get a human being. This is a company I have a great relationship with. And I'm like, hey, I need an ejector rod for a Cobra. Well, we can only send it out on an RA or RMA or whatever. I'm like, dude, it's like a $5 ejector rod, man. Like, how hard is that? Nope, it's got to come back. And I said, well, the hammer spring in one of his other guns wore out. Can you send me a hammer spring? Nope. And it wasn't that long ago. I could call Smith & Wesson, get in touch with their LE rep when I was a cop and go, hey, I need a hammer spring or a strain screw or something. And it was no big deal. And I hadn't done that in a long time. So I thought, well, I'll just call them up and see what happens. And 90% of the manufacturers now will not let those parts out of their site. And the way it was explained to me, he goes, our legal has to approve that. And I'm like, are you an attorney has to sign a piece of paper so that you can send me an ejector rod? And he goes, well, unless Brownells or Midway carries it, no. And I'm like, and I call them. I call the reps from Brownells and Midway, and they're like, no, we're not going to order one ejector rod for you. Sorry. So,
yeah, in the last 2 years, it's gone from, with Smith & Wesson in the last 2 years, it's gone from me being able to order any part that I asked for one of their revolvers. It didn't even matter. And being I'm a Smith & Wesson armorer, so I'm on their list, and I'd call them, I'd tell them what part I need, they send it. Doesn't matter. to now I call, like when I needed this cylinder, the lady from Smith & Wesson told me she doesn't even have a part number on it so that she could send me one. I had to go to the Smith & Wesson, my rep for my area. I had to email him, and he was able to get it coming to me. And it's a travesty. It's an absolute travesty. I felt very disrespected.
Well, it made me like, I was like, are you kidding, man? Like even up to a few years ago, I could have called any one of these companies and said, hey, I need a rear sight. I need this. I'll pay for it, ejector rod, screws, things like that. And now it's like, nope, send them back. We'll do it here. And I sympathize with them because all the gun companies have been under full frontal assault for 50 years from the legal side.
Yeah.
And when you really look at the industry, the gun manufacturing industry is not a huge industry. People think it's massive, and it's not. It's not even a drop in the bucket compared to the hardware industry. It's like unbelievably small in comparison. But now the attorneys, just to hedge against the legal side of things, litigation side of things, they just are hesitant to let anything out of the factory. So anyway,
that's one area where I was very fortunate kind of in my early days is there was a couple of gunsmiths, and then there's another guy who buys out of states local here to me that they had purchased a very, very large lot of Smith & Wesson parts, cylinders and yokes and all the internals. And, they were older guys when they bought this stuff, and I was still pretty young just coming into this. And they called me up and said, hey, we've got all these parts. Do you want them cheap? And I'm like, I don't really, at that time, I didn't really have a use for them, but I thought, well, maybe future, who knows? So I bought them, and boy, am I glad I did, because I got a lot of parts, and it's all pre 2000 stuff. It's all before the MIM stuff. So I'm sure glad.
Yeah. Mike? And that's part of it. It's become a bit of, for you guys, the cottage industry of this is, Dave, I know you in particular, dude, you're building retro rods.
Mm-hmm.
You're building, basically taking those older guns and turning them into, dropping vet motors into, 60s bodies and stuff, modern fuel injected stuff. It's become its own little industry, more so than, like I said, these things are kind of share a lot with the automotive industry.
Oh yeah.
You can't fix your own car these days.
No.
You go buy a new car right now. Good luck fixing that at home. It's just kind of the way kind of our world has changed with mechanical things. Is we build kind of a lot of disposable stuff now that has a built-in life and built-in almost obsolescence. And then we have, a lot of us pining for, the things of our youth, but we want to make it better. Because, I drove all that stuff. My car in college, I drove basically a Plymouth Roadrunner with a 550 horse 440, and it was my daily driver.
Mm-hmm.
With an 800 double pumper or 850 double pumper with no choke on it. It was cut off the top of the thing. You sit there and think about running that today. Who wants to do that? You drop a crate motor with a fuel injection in it, and everybody's like, choke. Who does that?
Yeah.
So there's sort of this new kind of place of finding where all this stuff belongs in this. And, the reality is we're living in sort of an LCR world. Mm-hmm. It was kind of interesting. The snub event we just did really was could have been a real eye opener for people. And we're trying to plan some stuff in the future to help these manufacturers out. Because I think the other problem is I don't think the manufacturers really understand. There's such a disconnect between the manufacturers and the end users right now, particularly in the revolver market. And Bryan and I have both had this discussion pretty regularly. When people are all, God, they don't build the revolver I want. That's because you're not Smith & Wesson, Ruger, or Taurus's customer. And they're all, what are you talking about? And I go, you're not their customer. And then I go talk to a gun dealer and they're like, well, they're not doing. I go, you're not their customer either. Smith & Wesson and all those companies' customer is Lipsy's.
Yeah.
RSR.
Yeah.
Davidson's. Those are their customers. All these other people are not their customers. And everybody is kind of talking to the wrong people. Bryan and I spend a lot of time with their customers to try to help. We're doing what we can to try to do this, but the eye opener, for example, at the event we just did, was looking at the student guns at that event. How many current production Smith & Wessons do you think were there?
Current production?
Current guys running current production Smith & Wessons, particularly in the mid-size guns. Not the J's, obviously, for reasons. We had a lot of UCs there and that type of thing.
Well,
but how many
production? You're looking at the 66s mostly, and if some of the 686s.
You think you saw any of those, or you think you saw a lot of Model 10s? Yeah, 2-inch 10s.
A lot of 10s and not 27s.
A lot of 3-inch classic Ks, detective specials, all of those things. And, I think it came to note, like, wow, maybe we're not making the guns that the serious people want. And then the production guns, every one of them had a lock delete in it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's the average age of the students, do you suppose?
All of ours are Gen X, baby. That's our world. We are the world of Gen X. So Bryan and I joke around. Bryan is the last year Gen X, and I'm a plank holder. That's our customer base on most of this stuff. Now, here was the thing, though. We did have a very young couple there. We had a bunch of ladies there who are learning, were there specifically to learn the revolver because a lot of women are being told not to get revolvers, and that's, we think, is a travesty because most of the instructors have been told not to get them and don't have any good experience with them. So we're trying to build that. Now, what kind of guns do you think most of those were people shooting? Most of those that class the board, LCRs, baby, LCRs. Oh. They're Glock revolvers.
Yeah.
It's something they can relate to. It's polymer. It doesn't scare them. They have great triggers for out of the box. They're easy to run. We can get them in calibers that don't recoil super hard.
I have 3 of them because of you guys.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
2 are 327s.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you make a good point because it's like one of the guns that I would like to see is a model, the 627, the 8-shot, but without the fancy cut up barrel, just a standard half lug, half underlug, something that looks like the 27, 3-inch and 4-inch. That would just be a classy looking gun.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Really?
Yeah, you're not the only guy thinking that. So yeah, that's without violating an NDA. You're not the only one that thinks that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a lot of my thing is, why don't you take these classic guns that people who really know these guns want and do a modern manufactured version of it?
Yeah.
We know what people like. Let's do some modern versions of those with the modern manufacturing with kind of the same, it's almost, again, back to the cars. It's almost kind of like, Dodge re-releasing Challengers.
Yeah.
Yeah. We really like those things with a Hemi. Let's just do a modern version of it. And, you can do that. And some of this is going to be related back to we're going to try to do what we can to relate that back into the gun market for a certain segment of the market And the other segment is stuff like LCRs or the 856 Tauruses and some of these that are, again, directed into a certain price point in the market.
Yeah.
Didn't Smith kind of attempt to do that a little bit with the classic line? Didn't they try to reintroduce some of the older?
Yeah, some of these were great guns at the wrong time. One of the ones we always point to is like the 296s and 292s. The K-frame or the L-frame bodyguard snubs.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the right gun, wrong time stuff in those configurations. Some of those heritage line guns, classic line guns, if you look at kind of when they released them, might not have been the right time. And it's hard to predict that in the gun industry that, hey, we're going to release this new really cool kind of classic-y revolver. And nobody predicts there's some political upheaval and everybody is out turning the vacuum on to suck up every low-rent piece of crap AR configured thing and Magpul 30-round magazines like dust, of just sucking every one of them out of the atmosphere is probably not a good time for, a classic revolver to be released. Right. And that's a lot of time tends to what happens. And these revolver markets sometimes take some time to evolve. Usually, by the time they evolve properly, they've kind of like lost the thing and everybody's beyond it. I mean, one of the big things is like 327 Fed Mag is a glorious thing. Not in how people want it to be used, but that cartridge, bringing the 32 cartridges back was fabulous. It's just now sort of taken hold, even though it's been here for a while.
Well, and if you look back, like Dave, you were talking about some of the classic line stuff. Some of the coolest classic line guns I thought were the 40-1. They brought back the grip safety Centennial, and that happened 2003, 2004. Well, if we go back to 2003, 2004, the magazine ban just sunset. And people were scooping up polymer striker fired guns and standard capacity magazines. So it was a flash in the pan, and there were several iterations, the 296, the 242, the Smith & Wesson Night Guards that were, for the time, it was the right gun, or it was the right gun at the complete wrong time in history. And I saw a lot of that going on. That was right when I first got into police work, and I was carrying a 340 SC on my ankle because it weighed nothing. Right. And that was better than a classic model 36 because it weighed less than half. And anyway, but a lot of that development happened right there in that magazine sunset window that just, man, it created an arms race in the polymer striker fired world. And I don't know that polymer striker fired guns, I don't know that they can get any better. I don't know that they got to a plateau where now people are like, what do we do now? Well, let's do 2011s again. Like it's really funny to me to see that trend and go, well, yeah, because people are bored with, and I think one of the big things with seeing the uptick in revolvers, and I talked about this on several podcasts, is the arms race of polymer guns got so good that, Smith & Wesson, Glock Gen 5, you name it, any Walther, PDP, whatever, any of those guns, you can put them all on a table and they all do the same thing. They're all reliable and they're all accurate. And they've got, triggers you can manage, sights you can see. So people kind of go, well, do I want to buy 5 more of the same thing? Or, well, let me look at these revolvers. And I think that's the same reason that custom 1911s and 2011s have kind of had an uptick in the last couple of years that we've never really seen. So
do you feel that I had a thought that it's like, I almost feel like they've over tacticaled people with the striker fired guns. It's like now it's not just enough to have a striker fired gun. You have to have the hollow sight. You have to have the light on the rail, and you have to have this and that. And it's almost like when you go into some of these gun shops, it's like if you're not buying all these tactical gizmos for your Glock, that you're not part of the club.
Yeah. And I think that they've alienated the largest sector of the gun buying populace. It's driven by less than 1% of the end users, which are mill and LE tactical dudes, right? That really gets driven by them. And then I call it the my mom factor.
Yeah.
My mom's 67, 68, 66, somewhere in there. And well, if she goes into a gun shop and she's, surrounded by multicam and, but like don't tread on me shirts and all that. And she's like, well, I want a gun because Walmart's scary.
Yeah.
Like that's probably the largest segment of the gun buying populace right there.
Yeah.
And a lot of that world has completely just walked right past them.
Yeah. And that's why I think that when they see something simple like the J-frame, they're like, wait, I don't have to get all that tactical stuff. I can just carry this. Well, how wonderful.
Well, the problem is somebody has to tell them that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of mine and Brian's world right now, is telling people it's okay. It's okay to just carry a convenient, easy to use, easy to operate, very simple fire extinguisher. That's what we call them, are fire extinguisher guns for a fire extinguisher market. Not everybody, I've used this analogy before. Most people think it's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher in the home.
Yeah.
It's a really good idea. Most people are not joining the firefighter forums, going down to be a volunteer fireman, reading Fireman Magazine, checking hose dimensions on YouTube. This model gets 4 more gallons per minute than this model hose. They just want a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And, we start looking at stuff like that Taurus 856, some of these other guns. We are consulting now with companies on developing guns for that market specifically, trying to build marketing and instructors to talk to that market of people who just want a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And, for most stuff, as we've talked about, on the modification side, God, they just need a trigger that's manageable. It'd really be nice if they had somebody who could teach them how to run that trigger. Because the problem is the kid at the store can't teach them how to run that trigger because they don't like those guns.
Right.
Because the people who work at these gun stores now are spending all their time on YouTube getting educated, or they're feeding their USPSA ranking. And more power to them. It's their hobby. It's what they do. I get it. Dave, I used to work at before I got in the gun business, I worked at a speed shop because I had a race car in college. If you have a race car in college, where you go get a job? At the speed shop, so you get the employee discount or be able to buy used stuff. Oh, God, a guy just brought in a used tunnel ram.
Yeah.
That's what you do. It's nothing different. It's not wrong. It's just, are they really doing the customer base a favor for getting Brian's mom a gun?
Yeah.
And, that's why for us, we've really kind of attacked this Gen X generation, as they tend to be the most open to the revolvers. And then we're also seeing sort of on the bottom end of that, which is weird, is sort of this very young generation, because they're not tactical just because it's an affront to their beliefs at the moment. They're coming out of these schools and wokeness and some of this other stuff, and all of that stuff is scary, and you shouldn't have weapons of war. And they still equate the revolver as, I tell people the benefit to these guns is if you talk to any liberal person and ask them what the Second Amendment is about when it comes to a handgun, and you show them a classic detective special, that's what they're talking about, or a J-frame. That's the Second Amendment to them. The over-under shotgun or the lever action rifle, that's what they interpret that means. We all know it's wrong as can be. It could be nothing further than the truth, but that is their belief. And sometimes those are also your customers. And or they have voted themselves into places, I kind of get away from a lot of these PNS stuff outside of this revolver stuff or 12 gauge stuff or whatever, because I get all the hate mail afterwards. Well, I can't believe that idiot's advocating for a lever action rifle or a shotgun instead of an AR-15. You do realize 50% of the population of this country lives in places you can't own that stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Not by their own choice. They voted for it. Sorry, but that's the reality is, and I hear these guys when I start talking about a travel gun, which I generally travel with revolvers or nothing that holds more than 10 rounds. But generally I travel with revolvers.
Yeah.
And, everybody gives me, well, I travel with my staccato double. Cool. When you fly into Los Angeles, like I do regularly, or go work in Chicago on a security gig or whatever, you can tell me all about your staccato. It might be your hotel room gun, and you're going to find yourself in trouble if you choose to use it, where nobody cares about this stuff I'm using. And I got a badge behind it, and I still don't press the button.
Yeah.
Because I'll beat it in the end, but I don't want to take the ride.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just carry my little revolvers around and I stay out of trouble.
Yeah, that's like what I tell people in my other world, that if you want to be prepared and you're in California or New York, you should be looking at my scout rifles. Because what is it? It's just a hunting rifle. But man, when you know how to run it, it's a fighting rifle.
Yeah, they're not, but it's what you have. I watch these things when some hurricane hits somewhere in New York, when they get the weird weather stuff and everybody and the looters are out, and you look, there's a whole bunch of people sitting on their porch with a sporting shotgun. Because all they can have, all of a sudden, you got to kind of run what you brung. And, so these things become very practical for the normies. And practical for the normies is a market. And yet we market to the 1%ers. And you know what? Hey, I love the people who go out and compete with these guns. That's awesome. They're taking the firearms performance to levels we've never seen. I'm all about that. But trying to equate that to what, Brian's mom needs. And I go to church with Brian's mom. I know I got a pretty good idea. She doesn't need a staccato.
Yeah.
Or in all honesty, or a Glock 43. Both are a disaster waiting to happen. Shoot, I can't shoot a Glock. My arthritic hands, I can't shoot a Glock 43 worth of heck. And then we stop addressing a lot of problems. We keep telling women, no, don't ever get a revolver. Don't let anybody demean you into that. You need a Glock 43 or one of these compact 9mm. And I go, you guys do realize, just physicality, they've got 50% of the grip strength of you going in. So maybe getting them into a gun that requires no grip strength to run the gun properly without malfunction, it might be a good thing. Oh no, you're weird. You're an idiot. Okay, fine. Yeah. Like I said, we get these ladies in class. Once we show them how to run a trigger and how to work the recoil and get them into calibers that aren't stupid, in these guns, all of a sudden they're like, yeah, this is great. And we don't, we don't see them doing, we don't see them malfunctioning the guns ever.
Right.
I mean, no less than Bill Jordan, a giant of a man with monstrous hands, opined that the 22 Magnum was a great round to put in a snub revolver. He wasn't wrong.
Right.
The guy ain't stupid. You go back to Charles Askins, a killing machine of the highest order. We have maybe not produced a better man killer on this planet than Charles Askins, who opined that that the revolver carried in the pocket is the gun of the populace, is really the gun of the citizen. Oh, well, they didn't have crime back in the 30s like they got now. Okay, whatever. You keep thinking that.
Apparently they didn't hear the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, apparently they didn't know. But what would Askins know about violence and border crime? We got border crime now. Okay. Yeah. So you sit there and go back in history and look at this stuff, and it's all out there, and there's no reason to do a modern version of that. The 22 LCR is the gun, or the 351C or whatever. These are the guns that if Bill Jordan was alive today, he's going, yeah, that'd be a really good thing to put in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a crazy world we're living in. I think these guns have a really good place for them. I think we need better people talking to the public about them, educating people about them. We need guys like you out here talking about how to get work done on them, or what actually needs to be done, versus some dude on YouTube who's like, no, just take it apart. So you put your screwdriver under here, just pop that plate right off of there. And, okay, see that little screw down there? That's the trigger adjustment screw. Just back that out. The trigger will get real good. Okay. Go to class with that baby. Let me know how it works.
That's like running fingers down a chalkboard for me.
Yeah. I actually did it's a 6-part YouTube video series on my trigger job, just to try to dispel those guys, because they tell you, oh, all the gunsmiths do is change out a spring. It's like, no. So I have a 6-part video series, and each video is like between 30 and 45 minutes, and it's probably the most boring watch you'll ever have. And
that's the problem, is because the dude out there with the YouTube celebrity with a 3.5 minute short on YouTube,
yep,
has 100,000 times more views than yours.
Yep. But I'll bet you I got more sending me their guns to work on than he does.
Right. Well, no, and that's the point, is they're not looking for guns for them to work on. They're looking on, on their how many likes they have.
Yeah.
And then what's sad is that's the dude who now is talking to the social media marketing people at all these companies, influencing what is being made.
Yeah. Are you talking about Bryan?
That's the big why.
The why?
The why just pisses off the internet. That's his purpose on the planet.
No, critical thinking.
I was going to say, it's really not that hard to piss off the internet, is it, Bryan?
Just talk about range Pokemon, or hey, do you own a number 2 Swiss pillar file? No, that's probably not the gun for you. Yeah, but it is what it is. I've toned that down a bit, because we are working with professional companies now, and I try to not be caustic or inflammatory, but occasionally I'll throw a zinger out there. And a lot of it, the funny thing with the social media stuff, a lot of the stuff that was ticking people off, like Darryl and I would have a conversation, and I would pose it as a question. I just go, here's a question, here's something that came up. And I would watch people lose their absolute minds over like I can't even think of a good example right now, but that world is funny. It's so pretend nowadays that I've had people that have gotten just, pardon my language, ass hurt over something I posted on the internet, and then I run into them at SHOT Show, and they don't even know who I am. Like, I remember you. How's it going? Yeah. Did you buy a pillar file yet? What?
Matt's a good one to do that kind of stuff. He does it a lot on. I got started a defensive revolver Facebook group, and Matt gets those guys going good.
I just bring up a couple things.
And that's why
I'm not trying to be mean. He's just like, hey, check this out. Here's some different information. It's like, oh my God, he gets attacked.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how trying to manage this stuff now. And the frightening thing is, we're all in the same boat. My little, DB shooting adventure thing, I'd put articles up and get literally tens and tens of thousands of views on stuff, and shares and do whatever. And now I get, like 4, because we're also shadow banned and crushed by this stuff. It's why Bryan and I have gone behind a paywall with our own site we manage. Most people aren't aware what happened to us with Patreon. We had a very successful Patreon page for being in for, a month. We're on our way to having our stuff made. And, we reposted a video of the Lipsy's 32 revolver release, or the UC revolver release, that we consulted on. And literally Patreon deplatformed us, kept all our money, and kept all of our stuff. We had to pay, a very expensive lawyer to threaten them with a lawsuit just to get our content back. This is what we're all dealing with now. And I sit here and look at this and people go, well, why are you guys hiding all this stuff behind a paywall now? This is why. A lot of this stuff, we have so much infighting. Nobody wants the good information. They're out there chumming free stuff. And, people without a lot of knowledge about this stuff are spreading horrific levels of stupid and not backed up with anything other than I heard Z's and the guy with pretendicitis on YouTube speculated that while he was tactically LARPing his bathroom assault in his underwear. These guys come up with this stuff, and I just shake my head and I go, okay, we'll just go ahead and kind of keep this to ourselves, and you can come get it if you want it. But what we are trying to do is at least make some inroads at the corporate level of getting these corporate level stuff onto getting the product out there that needs to be out there, to really address that completely left out community that nobody is paying attention to, which is the ones who don't watch YouTube gun videos. Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I have a very small internet presence. I don't participate in the industry nearly as much as I probably should. I could probably make a lot more money if I actually participated more and tried to drum up more business. But, I just, the older I get, I have such a low tolerance for, I've had people say to me, well, why don't you ever, make a video about the technique that you use to make barrel fitting in a 1911 or whatever? That's just an example. And I tell guys, I said, well, the reason that I don't do it is because I do it differently than maybe Scott does it. And his way is perfectly fine. It works for him. There's nothing wrong with that. My way works for me. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I have people come to me or come at me and say, well, the way you do it's stupid because it's not the same way I do it. Yep. I don't have much of a tolerance for that kind of stuff. And then I end up getting upset, and I spend way too much time trying to defend myself and arguing with what I call arguing with stupid, even though I know I'm right and it's worked for all these years and I've had great results and great, success with it. I just choose to stay away from it because I don't want to deal with the infighting and all that stuff that goes along with it. I just don't.
And the funny thing, Dave, you're really not arguing with a guy who fits his barrels different than you do. You're arguing with a guy who watched a video from somebody who they're a fan of, who fits a barrel different than you do. That's just a different gunsmith.
Yep.
You know, and it gets kind of hard. It's frustrating, and it's. I'll be honest with you. It's kind of what drove Bryan and I into the revolver market. Is I'm like, this is something we both really know. We're passionate about. We carry them every day. We actually believe this stuff. And it has completely gotten us out of arguing about Glock stippling patterns. What's the best IR laser for home defense?
Is your dot?
Yeah, it's completely removed us from so much of this. But when we do have to get in a pissing contest about revolvers, we tend to hit it pretty hard back because we do know it, and from some level of actual experience of, we get these guys now, it's like, well, I've been into revolvers for a couple of years now myself. Very, very cool, but dude, that's so what, it's like, how many thousands of people have you run through any sort of training capacity, maintenance at an agency level, maintenance at a mass level like you guys see? How many revolvers have you guys been through of other people's screw-ups to maybe formulate an idea in your little heads with like a combined, 50 years of experience or whatever of why that revolver doesn't work, or maybe what modifications it really needs versus well, I kind of like my trigger to be 6 pounds. Okay, whatever, dude,
My question to them is always, how many forcing cones have you split? And when the answer is, what's a forcing cone? I go, okay.
With Dave, I totally get what Dave's saying, because it's like with my YouTube videos, it's like I'm always like, the one that people say, oh, you didn't put, any empty cases in the cylinder when you tightened down that ejector rod. It's like, that's because it's a modern Smith and you don't need to do that. It doesn't have the pins to break. I get that. But what keeps me going into it, Dave, is because I'm the type of gunsmith that I want to see what you're doing, because you might be skinning that cat in a better way than I'm skinning it, and I can learn something from you. It's just like, I started trolling Tiger McGee's page before he passed away, and I didn't keep doing it even since, because he's got some brilliant jig setups in his mills. And I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. And me doing my videos there's not as many, but there are gunsmiths that have responded and be like, hey, that was clever. I really like that. Thank you for sharing it. And I'm like, those are the people that I do this for. The other gunsmiths out there that were newer or wanting to learn or looking for a different way to skin that cat, and they see my work and they take it on. And that's the ones I keep going for.
And see, that's great. It really is. I mean, I commend you for that. But see, here's the thing. If I do something and you want to know how I do it, call me and ask me. I'll tell you. There's no secret. I don't hold any secrets. I don't have some black magic over anybody else.
Yeah. Well, 99% of what we do now has been being done for the last 100 years, and we're just rediscovering old information.
Right. And where this all started for me was when I was a baby gunsmith back in 99 when I got started, when I was just general gunsmithing. I was fortunate enough to get in right at the tail end of the affordable import rifle kits. Yep. So I built hundreds of FALs, FNFALs, and hundreds of AKs back in those early days of the 2000s, before Obama came in and changed all of the regulations on them. And I was very active on the internet back then, and I was involved in a forum website called the FNFAL Files. It was a very good website. There's a lot of knowledgeable people on there. And just like any other forum type website, as time progressed and it got older and more people came on board, I was very well known. I mean, there were guys sending me rifles from all around the country, and I would have a new guy come on and he'd say, okay, well, how do you time your barrel? And I'd say, well, this is how I do it. And he would come back, well, that's wrong. That's not how FN does it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay,
I don't have the tooling FN has,
so I don't know. You know, but and I found myself spending an enormous amount of time defending what I knew to be fact.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to prove myself to this person who is on the other side of this keyboard that I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
You know, and so I withdrew my presence on the internet, if you will. I mean, I have a website and I have social media and I hate it, but and thankfully most of the time any interactions that I do have with people are normally very positive.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's many people out in the world that are pissed off at me. At least I hope not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Talk about 1911 barrel fits. No, I'm kidding.
No, dude. You know, and what's amazing to me about that too, though, is the infighting amongst the different 1911 pistol smiths.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
well, you know,
my way is the only way.
You know, it all comes down to fighting for dollars.
Yeah.
You know, that's all of this stuff is fighting for bucks.
Like with the 1911s.
And even the internet time is fighting for monetized content. Yeah, and the sad thing is, you know, everybody's losing their monetized content, so that was worth killing ourselves over the monetized content.
Yeah.
That you know, Meta and everybody else is crushing for you. Great. Right. You know, we've dumbed our world down for no apparent reason.
I was never monetized. When my channel first got to the point where I had enough viewership to get monetized, they reviewed my channel and simply said no.
Yeah.
They didn't even give me a chance. And so, you know, like what Dave was saying, I get you. I mean, I've gotten to the point where if it's on like a comment on YouTube and they're arguing about the way I'm doing, I just delete their comment. And it's like, go do your own video and show me wrong. But I'm not arguing with you guys anymore. I just delete the comments.
I got fired up a couple days ago. I was telling Darryl, some guy got on. We've got a YouTube channel. We'll put up a free video or like an information video for Revolver Roundup or something. And some guy goes, "You got 2 videos for talking about Taurus. You must be a shill for Taurus and not know anything about revolvers." And I'm like, well, I'm just a NRA revolver shooter, and I've only worked on these things for about 30 years. So, what do I know? But hey, it was free. If you'd like to more, AmericanFightingRevolver.com, and for less than a cup of Starbucks coffee a day, you can get all the info. So anyway.
Yeah, it's become and the thing is, I tell people, I go, thanks to what's going on politically in the world, we're going back to blogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got high hopes for Rumble.
Well, we're going to take a 20-year step back onto how we exchange information in our world.
Yeah.
And it should be interesting to see how that pans out. I had
high hopes for Rumble too, and I submitted all their monetization stuff because they won't nuke gun channels. And apparently all of the big YouTube channels are already over there. And they're like, we're not accepting any more advertised or any more monetized channels. And I'm like, that's fine. At least it's another outlet. But if we publish a video, we typically 1,000, 1,500 views, depending on what it is. If it's in one of the informational videos about an event, they'll get more. But I go to Rumble and it's like 150. It's about a 10. But I think time wears on, it will start to grow. Rumble will start to grow, at least until, YouTube buys it. Anyway.
But
sorry.
I Matt, you got anything else on the revolver stuff you want covered?
I really think this has all just been awesome. Covered so much, and not only educational, but entertaining as well.
Well, you got all these great.
Somebody said cover holster selection. I think I covered that at the very beginning.
Yeah, where to even start?
It's like,
I think that could actually, just holster selection and carry stuff for revolvers may be a great next entire podcast.
And calibers and ammunition and yeah.
Yeah, the operational side or deployment side. Yeah.
Deployment considerations. So with that in mind, let's get some final thoughts, some final thoughts and plugs. And I'm going to say my absolute favorite thing. Make sure you're supporting those sources that you have found to be beneficial. These guys have been sharing some wonderful insights for over the past 2 hours. If you like what they had to say, find them on social media. Follow. If you're seeing their content and it's helping you in some way, you need to share it. You definitely need to give it a like. And that, again, goes with everything primary and secondary. Primary and secondary turns 10 this year. We've been doing the podcast for, I want to say, 8 years now. This has been an absolute blast to bring in these kinds of guys to talk about these kinds of subjects where this is definitely not mainstream, and it's unfortunate. But I'm glad that we can talk about the things that aren't mainstream. The content that we produce, it is available to everyone, but it's not for everyone. So this specific episode won't be everyone's cup of tea, but for those that are looking for this information, I think they got a treat. This was awesome, and it's great to have you guys here. So we'll get those final thoughts, final plugs, and then I'll wrap it up. Let's see here, Bryan with a Y.
Yeah. So coming up pretty quick, we've got the Pat Rogers Memorial Revolver Roundup. Darryl and I'd be out there teaching at Gunsight. That event sold out. We're working on Revolver Fest 2025 for the East Coast. It's going to be a big event. So
huge.
It's going to be huge,
and beautiful.
Huge, beautiful dogs. It's going to
shout out to
but
Shane
yeah,
Gillis.
We're looking at getting the manufacturers, the revolver manufacturers out there to do a demo day. Working on that. It's all preliminary right now. Website will be going up here pretty quick, and sign up links will go out probably around January 1st, unless I can convince my accountant to do an accrual. So other than that, we've got we've got the Colt Python Experience coming up October 1st and 2nd. Down in Robert, Louisiana, with Ryan Gresham at the Range Ready Studios, Chris Sereno and that whole crew down there. We'll be filming a little content down there, but that's our next class until Revolver Roundup. Let's see what else. There's a whole host of things on the horizon. AmericanFightingRevolver.com is our hub of information, and we have an email list. We don't sell it to anybody. You get on it, and we'll keep you informed there. We charge $5 a month, and my final thing is nobody fits a 1911 barrel better or righter than Dave Laubert. So there you go.
Oh, you had to do it, didn't you?
I had to, man. I couldn't resist it.
Well, Dave, what you got?
Well, I want to say thank you for inviting me tonight. It's been a while since I've had any presence on the internet, so I appreciate that. But no, I'm happy to hear that the Revolver world is alive and well. I'm actually currently working in my Revolver backlog, so I'm hoping to get that down some here before I can go back to 1911s. And if you do have any need for custom revolver work, or if you have any kind of wild ideas that you maybe want to try to throw at me to see if I can come up with it, Defensive Creations LLC. I'm located in Northeast Ohio. Been doing it a long time, and I like coming up with new ideas. I do some restoration work, not much. There's people out there that are way better at restoration work than I am, so I generally will point you in that direction. But custom stuff I really enjoy. Trying to make the guns better fighting tools, better sights, better triggers, slab siding the barrel. Doesn't make it a better fighting tool, but it does look cool. I do a lot of work blueprinting the action, trigger jobs, chamfering charge holes, you name it. Whatever you think you can have done to a revolver, I can pretty much handle it. But if you ever want the work done, just feel free to give me a call, as long as you're not in a hurry, because I'm really busy.
Yeah, you're a natural choice for these discussions. I'm glad you were available.
I appreciate it. I was working on the second race car tonight, so I wasn't sure when I was going to get wrapped up. So
yeah. Nate, even though you ditched us.
Yeah, had a couple girls that needed to get ready for bed and needed some playtime before we went to bed too. So
that happens.
I was going to plug Roundup because I've been a couple times. It's excellent, but it's sold out. So I guess the only way to plug it would be to try to sign up next year. I walked into Roundup. It was a great Roundup. I said, wow, what a great Roundup. There's your Shane Gillis that I'm really bad at. Yeah. I think I really enjoy this stuff because I'm really interested in history, not just of revolvers, but generally. And I think if you really want a well-rounded understanding of anything gun related, I think you have to go back and look at how things were done before. And the more I do that, the more I realize, how keyed in everybody was. And just because it happened a long time ago doesn't mean it doesn't have a whole lot of merit. So got me over here scouring for old books and magazines and stuff like that, because it's really interesting. So as it relates to tonight, I mean, if you do lots of gun stuff and this is kind of your hobby and such, like it is for most of us, and you don't do anything revolver related, I think that's a missing piece. And I think everybody should be at least exposed to the idea. So
Cool. Darryl?
Okay, I'm going to go out here with Bryan covered most of it. Product. This is these are both prototypes. They're both coming. The Hammer AFR grips. We've worked extensively with Ryan to get these perfect.
Cool.
And as far as we're concerned, these are perfect. These grips are amazing that Ryan's done with us. And we're pretty excited. They'll be coming fairly soon. And the BFRH, the Bowman Fighting Revolver holster, we did this with Josh. Molds are getting made right now. These will be pretty soon along, and we got the pocket holsters and stuff. So we have a limited product, but what we do put out is serious revolver dude stuff for daily carry. We're happy with both of these products, the way they came out. So those are both coming, AmericanFightingRevolver.com in the store. Bryan said Revolver Fest next year is going to be massive, and there really won't be much of the selling out part of it. It's going to be a huge event. So we're excited about getting that planned. We will be at SHOT Show. And then on a side, I'll be out at Thunderstick Summit in Utah. I think it's October 11th through 13th. And Revolver Fest will be next year, same dates. What is it, Bryan? October 11th, 12th, 13th?
Yeah, Revolver Fest 25 is October 11th, 12th, 13th. It's a federal holiday weekend. The plan is to do a demo day, $25.
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, $25 cover charge. You can come in and play with all the manufacturers' revolvers. There'll be some special edition stuff out there. We've gotten an overwhelming amount of industry support yet again for a revolver event, which tells me we're probably on to something. So we'll have Sunday, Monday, we'll do a 2-day class with
100 students.
I think the plan is to cap it at 100, but I think if we got like 120, we would probably
just bring another instructor
on, and it's going to be just a little different format than the Pat Rogers Revolver Roundup. That deal has a life of its own. It's a great training event. I described the Pat Rogers Memorial Revolver Roundup as, number one, it's a great hang with all the dudes, right? It's at Gunsight, which, again, like, big check, and you also get to train and shoot revolvers. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how that event's gone. I'm not taking anything away from the training or any of that, but it's like a yearly gathering of, a club or something now.
Yeah.
So that's a really fantastic event. The Revolver Fest event is going to be kind of its own thing. And we're looking at possibly having 5 manufacturers out there, plus one of the big vendors, and some other support to come out there and let people get hands-on with these, assign an instructor to a manufacturer's bay to where, $25 ticket, and you can do all the things. And then for the people that are students, it'll be, you get the demo day, plus you get the 2 days of revolver training. So it's gonna be massively beautiful and huge. And then the store link, we've got the LCR pocket holster and the J-frame pocket holster. For some reason, those J-frame right-hand pocket holsters go fast. We're already almost out of them, by the way. So,
yeah, we eat all of Bowman's entire production on those. So if you want them, watch for our drops on them.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment on those because I've bought one of each. So if I'm primary carrying it in my pocket, I'll go left as a southpaw, but most of the time it ends up being a secondary and it's in my right pocket. If you look at the picture of those online, they look a lot bigger than they actually are. They look a lot bulkier than they actually are. Sorry, Darryl. That's
it's okay. I know what you mean. Being bulky is big and good.
So I would just say I have struggled pocket carrying with a lot of different holsters just due to clothing requirements at work. This is easier for me to carry than a lot of other smaller pocket holsters. Because it's Kydex and it's if you're looking at it from the top or bottom, it's shaped a little bit like that. It actually has a little bit of a tucking mechanism into your leg, more so than a lot of the other. I mean, I've got half a dozen other pocket holsters. I've got the Safari Lands, the Blue Force gear, pick which one it is. I have all of them. And for concealment wise, for me, if it can physically fit in your pocket, they're really good. So.
Yeah, and speaking of that, let's plan in a few weeks of doing a revolver holster podcast. I think that'd be great. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Out of curiosity, with the hammer grips or stocks or whatever the hell they are,
these are grips. Yeah.
Okay.
Stocks are natural material.
Another little
a tidbit.
Yeah, I love it. Are they only going to be available through your guys' website, or is he also going to have them on his site as well?
Both.
Okay, good.
Ours will be a complete kit. It'll be 3 of them. You'll get right, left, and one with a hook, one without.
Yeah.
Tie hardware, aluminum nuts, no signature corrosion, anything. Ryan, you'll be able to kind of piece them together from him direct. Though labeled inside as the AFR grip, we don't care who you get them from.
Gotcha.
But ours will be sort of a package thing where Ryan, you can go a little more a la carte with.
And that's packaged with like this shield style panel like this.
Yeah.
Or the hook like mine.
And those have what are they? Is it the high back?
Yeah, these are not only high. They're fully enclosed in the back.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah. You can see. So it effectively gives you like a K-frame trigger reach.
Yeah.
But boot, and then it comes up and kind of flares back just a touch at the top. Like, I don't know if you can see that, like the thickness up here at the top, and that keeps a J-frame anchored in your hand and takes some of that recoil bite away where it rolls on some of the other stock, like slicker stocks that are out there. And he uses a texturing in that centered carbon fiber that we kind of dubbed it rough out, because it's got like the feel and texture of like rough out leather. So it's not real abrasive against your skin, but when you grip down on it, it's really stable.
Cool.
Fascinating material. But those he's got, like every manufacturer, he's got production stuff going on. So those grips haven't yet gone into full production, and he's doing CAD programming and all that good stuff. So
cool.
The other thing real quick on the hook side, let's see if we can get it so you can see it. We call it a Haggard shelf. There's some there is a bit of development to how this was done here, specifically for when you draw them left-handed, that you can actually drive the gun down with your thumb on top of there to control recoil. So there's a lot more thought into these than just throwing a hook on the side of a thing or whatever. These have been through a lot of prototyping, and we think they are absolutely the best concealment J-frame grips ever done.
I'll put it this way. We went through 9 sets of prototypes to get this edge right here, or that little spot. 9 sets of prototypes to get the angle and the bevel of that right. I think we're on 34 sets of prototypes now. 34 or 32 maybe.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work into this. It's been a bit of a labor of love with Ryan.
Yeah.
And when these things release, these are going to be the kind of end all be all of J-frame grips.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. Would you replace your UC grips with these? Okay.
I don't have UC grips on any of my UCs.
Okay.
They're all these or laser grips on one set.
I'll tell you, on the 32s, those VZ grips are fantastic.
Yeah.
On the 38s, for some people love them and some people just absolutely hate them. And I don't, it's just different hand shapes.
Absolutely.
We've even had people on the hammer grips that are like, that's not for me. But with the way we had the top of the backstrap enclosed and the bevels on those, they tend to be a little more friendly shooting 38s than some of the VZs. But we still love John and VZ grips too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's the great thing about revolvers, is you're a screwdriver turn away from happiness, right?
It's like, sweet.
Yeah.
And back to final thoughts and plugs. Scott?
Yeah, well, tough group to follow. Hey, I wanted to say thanks to Matt for inviting me.
Oh, anytime.
This was a lot of fun, and I really looked forward to talking to all you guys on the panel. I've been, looking at a lot of your stuff lately, and it's like, hey, great, I get to talk to these guys.
Yes.
Van Dorsten Custom Firearms, vdcfirearms.com on my website, VDC Firearms on YouTube and Rumble. And then Van Dorsten Custom Firearms on Facebook. I've been doing revolver stuff for quite a while now. I do anything from mild to wild, and I am always up for a new challenge. So check out my stuff and give my page a like. And I hope to return again and add more stuff.
Sounds good. And these episodes are great for networking. Not necessarily just also for the listener, but also for the panelists, just to be able to compare notes. And I'm already getting messages right now in the chat. People are saying, hey, we need to get this. We need to do the other episode. Darryl brought up the good point of, maybe in a couple of weeks we'll do an additional. So we have the chat going. We'll just maintain this open invite for you guys. Maybe a couple others might be able to show up. We'll see. Fantastic discussion. Absolutely loved it. It's nice. Again, it's nice to talk about these subjects that aren't necessarily that mainstream. There's a possibility. And I know Bryan and Darryl are very active in trying to, what's the word? you're trying to keep the content, the information, the lost arts going on, because this isn't, again, not that mainstream. So it's wonderful to have these discussions to give people an idea of this is what's going on. I personally believe if you happen to be a gun owner, if you enjoy firearms, if you don't have at least a single revolver in your stable of guns, you are missing out. There are some huge advantages, and they're a blast. If you choose not to carry it defensively, we can talk about that in a later time. But just to own one and to understand it and to appreciate it, they're wonderful. And unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, I don't remember if I said it before or after we officially started, Model 10s. Man, I wish I jumped on those a lot sooner. But yeah, wonderful discussion. So big thanks to the panel. Big thanks to you, the listener, the viewer. Also, big thanks to our sponsors, Lucky Gunner, Overwatch Precision, Filster, Primary Arms, and Walther. Lastly, big thank you to the Patreon subscribers. If you like what we do, check out patreon.com/primary and secondary. We had people watching this live. They were providing real-time feedback. We were able to address that. If you want to participate in that, if you want to get these uncut live, all that kind of stuff, starts at $5 a month. If you just want to be on Discord, that's $1 a month. Sky's the limit on how much you want to spend monthly. I'll leave that to you to decide. But yeah, as I usually say at the end of these, typically putting one of these together is kind of herding cats. So I have no idea what we're doing next week or later this week. I have an idea, but I'm not going to say it yet because it may fall through, because they do fall through. So again, yeah, this is an absolute blast to be able to have these discussions. We do have 736 different Facebook groups covering everything you ever wanted to know. Not really. I think we're only at like 20. Also have the website, primarysecondary.com, with the forum/forum. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If you didn't get an opportunity to watch the Gary Roberts episode, that was fantastic. Unfortunately, some people weren't as open to the things being discussed. It's a shame. Some people were offended by the way information was presented. It's a shame. But yeah, we can't make everyone happy. But man, talk about a great info dump. So I think I will kill the feed so I can upload this and let the Patreon subscribers get it right away. So I will talk to you later.